but I lost Bill and Mike, so I'm going to... Monday, June 17th. Welcome to Winchester Select Board meeting. I'm joined tonight by Town Manager Beth Rudolph, Mike Betancourt, who will join us in a minute, Bill McGonigal, Anthea Brady, and Vice Chair John Fallon. Sorry for having folks wait. We had a bunch of things to cover before we get into our public session. But with that, I will turn it over to John to do some acceptance of donations.
Right. I move that we accept with gratitude a donation of $500 from Sports Management Services, Inc. to the Recreation Department to be used for expenses incurred at the Packer Ellis Tennis Courts.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you.
I move that we accept with gratitude donations of $2,250 from Anchor Society, John's Landscape, and the Pediatric Dental Associates of Winchester to the Recreation Department to be used for the summer concert series.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you.
I move that we accept with gratitude a donation of $1,500 from the Winchester Tennis Association to the Recreation Department to be used for landscaping services of the William Packer seating area at the Packer Ellis Tennis Courts.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'm yep. Okay.
I move that we accept with gratitude donations of $6,000 from the Family Action Network and Sachem Youth Football to the Recreation Department for the Ginn Light Project.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote yes.
I move that we accept with gratitude an EEC stabilization grant of $4,491.67 for the Recreation Department Kid Connection WRAP EEC childcare license for the month of June.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I move that we accept gratitude a donation of $100 from the Friends of Winter Pond to cover the balance of the 2023 yearly pond management.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the town manager's report. Take it away, Beth.
Thank you. So first up, I have an appointment. So in accordance with section 4-2B of the town charter, I've made the following permanent, regular, part-time appointment in the treasurer's office of Corrine Arsenal from Reading to the position of financial analyst. And I requested the board waive the customary 15-day appointment period.
All right, I move that we waive the 15-day waiting period for Corrine Arsenal for the treasurer's office financial analyst position.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. And just a few updates on items not on the agenda. First, we'll be celebrating the Juneteenth holiday this Wednesday, so Town Hall and town offices will be closed along with the transfer station. We'll also be celebrating the July 4th holiday that day, and then also we're closing town offices on July 5th as well as the transfer station for an extended weekend. The transfer station will reopen on Saturday, July 6th. Just a reminder to residents about our household hazardous waste collection program that we have. It's a partnership that we have with several other communities. The collection program is held in Lexington, and the next days are Saturday, July 20th, Saturday, August 17th. In September, it will be a Wednesday, September 18th from 4 to 7 p.m., and then back to Saturdays in October and November. And just a few updates on a couple projects we have going on. First, as the board's aware, we've been working with tool design on some traffic calming improvements in the town center. We've had quite a lot of outreach this spring with representatives from the business community, the Chamber of Commerce. We had a table at the town election, and we just had a virtual public meeting last week. So the next step is to have Tool go back and take that information and feedback that they've received from folks, come together back to the board probably this summer or early fall with a final recommendation for that project, and then have the board vote to move forward as we go into the next stage of design. Another project that we're working on with the planning department and the planning board is an economic development study. We were very lucky to receive $150,000 state earmark, and we did select a consultant. We had an RFP process earlier this year. So they will be working, the consultant is RKG, who also worked on the town's master plan process a few years ago. They'll be working over the next few months to conduct a economic and housing analysis, real estate analysis, a space demand and gap study, and then also do some stakeholder interviews. And then I expect we'll be back to the board for an update from them. We also are moving forward with the housing production plan update. So the next, we've had several working group meetings over this spring, as well as a couple virtual public meetings. The next step is for our consultant from MAPC to come into the board. We've actually scheduled on Monday, July 29th, we've actually scheduled a joint meeting with the planning board at 6:30, so that both boards can hear kind of the update on that plan. And then finally, just a few updates on construction projects. The work at the Washington and Cross Street Bridge repair is mostly complete. The Lynch School traffic calming project is currently out to bid. Bid opening is scheduled for mid-July. The Leonard and McDonald Field Playgrounds, we had a very well-attended meeting on June 10th, a stakeholder meeting to hear feedback from folks on the design for that project, and we got a lot of good feedback on that. Packer Ellis Tennis Courts, the schematic design will be complete over the next few weeks, and we'll have the consultants into the board to provide an update on that. Morocco Culvert, that bridge bid opening is scheduled for July 9th. The South Reserve Dam project bid opening is scheduled for June 20th, so later this week. Leonard Field Rapid Flashing Beacon project, the bump out is completed. We're just waiting to have the RFB installed there. And then the McCall Ambrose Library and Town Hall roofs, as well as the library and Town Hall windows, that 90% design and cost estimates are expected to be complete by mid-July. With that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Beth? Okay, thanks, Beth. Pretty comprehensive report. I appreciate that. Is anybody here for public comment this evening? If you are, raise your hand or come forward. Okay, seeing nothing, and we don't have a public hearing, so we're going to get to our business agenda. Tonight we have two candidates for the one student position on the Climate Action Advisory Committee. So we'll take you up in alphabetical order by your last name. So Vita, if you could come up first, and then Catherine, you'll go next. And Vita, help us with your last name if you could, and say it slowly for my benefit.
Hello all, my name is Vita Belovskaya, you just call me Vita. I'm a sophomore at Winchester High School, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
So if you could tell us a bit, I know you've been attending some meetings,
Yes.
why you're interested in taking that student position?
You might remember me from last year when I applied for this position. I am extremely interested and committed to leveraging youth voices in the sphere of sustainability on a local scale, especially in Winchester. I'm passionate about environmental justice and climate resilience, and I really hope to make my mark on this town and help with local sustainability efforts in progress.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Vita?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Vita, thank you for applying and for your involvement. If you had to pick one sustainability item to focus on, what would that be?
Well, as you may know, the Select Board will be reviewing the Stretch Energy Code today, so that's very important, and of course that's something we should focus on. I also think that electrification is a very important aspect of managing our own climate emissions, and prioritizing that would be very, very useful for both Winchester as a town and on its reflection on global carbon emissions.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have you back. Vita, could you tell us what's one of the things that you learned from being in a non-voting position for the past year? And it could be climate-wise something that's interesting, or what did you learn about the operation of the board?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed my time as a non-voting member on the Climate Action Committee, and I've really learned about the importance of the spirit of collaboration within the climate space, and I've learned just how important it is to elevate youth voices within this space, and how important it is to keep making progress for future generations.
Thank you.
Bill or Mike?
And Thea took my question.
It's
But
an
thank you
excellent
for
question.
applying. It's great that you're showing civic energy and getting involved, especially for long-term goals like climate action. So,
Yes, thank you.
thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Vita. And don't go far because we'll be making a decision
Okay.
before
Of course.
the night's run.
And I'd just like to add that I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I really hope you'll consider me as a member. I try to be very active in the community. I'm president of the Winchester Environmental Club, and I hope to continue doing good work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Catherine, if you can come up. If you just tell us your name and your interest in serving and your involvement so far with climate issues, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Catherine Plosky, and the reason that I'm interested in working with Winchester's Climate Committee is because I've been doing a lot of climate action in the past, but that's more been on a larger scale. It's rather been online, and I'm looking for an opportunity to work in my own town with people who I see, and some way to give back to my community and not just go to a few Zoom meetings a month.
Great. John? I'll just go around. We'll start with John and Anthea maybe, but go ahead, John, if you have any questions. Maybe you want to ask the favorite climate
I
issue.
don't, I just want to compliment both folks on their ability to get up here and speak in front of a group of people and be on TV, and it's very cool. Are you nervous? No, just kidding.
You're not helping.
She wasn't allowed. I know, that's the whole point. So, no, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for applying. Have you, or maybe if you have had an opportunity to watch some of the Climate Action Advisory Committee, or if you've had an opportunity to talk to some of the members, what was the thing that really drew you to it and sort of helped you see what impact you could make?
I think what really drew me to it is I've been going to meetings with a statewide committee that is working to bring climate resilience to schools, and they were talking about how they were having planning sessions for their school to help make them more climate friendly, more climate resilient. And I wanted to see how I could help with that in Winchester, and I was talking to some of the members, and they said that they did that on that committee, so that's what drew me in, and I could take the skill set that I've learned from working with other people in other towns online to then take that to Winchester and help people here.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks again for your application and getting involved and everything else. We need more people working on all these issues. What year are you in high school?
I'm in 9th grade.
You're in 9th grade? Okay. In the groups that you've been working with on the state level, just, how large are they, and how are you contributing to their effort?
I'm on a few different ones. So with the school committee one, because I haven't been working with the school quite yet, and I've only gone to one meeting, I've been mainly a listener, trying to learn from others, trying to see what I can take from them and then apply it here. But on the other committees, I was on a transportation committee with the Massachusetts Sierra Club, and that committee's about 4-ish people regularly, and then like another 10 who come occasionally, and we try and work to get legislators to help us with clean transportation. One of the big things that I've personally worked on this past year is trying to get more funding for electric school buses and trying to urge school districts to apply for that funding. I'm also on the Plant-Based Planet team, trying to encourage plant-based eating throughout Massachusetts, I guess. And I've been trying just mainly advocacy, spreading the word about things that people can do. So I've touched a few different things.
Great. Thank you for that.
Sounds it for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions?
No, I was just say thank you so much for applying, and we're still interviewing, but it is important that you stay with the Climate Action Committee and everyone, and you can hear from Vita, well, that kind of stuck with things. It's unfortunate that we can't just keep on adding student positions to this committee. We always get, in this predicament because everyone is so qualified and so engaged. So thank you very much for being willing to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Could we just convert one of them to the Permanent Street Tree Committee? Because they've got similar goals, and we need people there, too.
One motion at a time, Bill.
Fair enough.
So for the board, I think there's also in our packet a request to change the term for the student position, so we'll take up that motion second. But for the one student term to expire August 31st, 2025, and then if we change the term, we can make that motion second. We do have two candidates. We have one position, and I suppose if whichever of Vita or Catherine isn't appointed to the position, they could still serve in that committee in a non-voting capacity. So certainly, to Mike's point and to everyone's point, please stay engaged and stay involved. So any discussion, if anyone wants to make a motion for one of our two candidates to be appointed to that student term, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move that we appoint Vita to the climate action position as listed on our agenda. And, you know, as I said before, I mean, I appreciate the time that Vita extended to the Climate Action Committee and kind of hung in there. And I certainly, you know, hope that extends to any of our student volunteers. So this is one of this might be the only committee, right, that we have a student volunteer on, right? So it's a great opportunity for us, and hopefully we can have it be on more committees as well.
Okay. Is there a second? Mike made a motion to appoint Vita to that
I did,
position?
yes.
Yep. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I vote yes. And Catherine, we hope you'll stay involved.
Please.
And then if we want to take up the second motion to immediately change the term of the position we just appointed Vita to,
So would move and seconded to amend the term date for the Climate Action Committee for the specific position of voting high school representative, term to expire at the end of June annually.
Can you specifically say it should be the end of June, June 30th?
To expire June 30th annually.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
To be clear, Vita's term begins and does not expire June 30th. It will expire June 30th of 2025.
2025, right. Any other discussion on that? If Climate Action thinks it's easier to then find candidates and staff this position, so Vita, your term would expire next June, not next August, but it's still your term, it's still your seat. Any other discussion from the board before we take a vote on that? Okay. All those in favor of the change in the motion, the term? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have an appointment to Wildwood Cemetery. We have one incumbent who is not here, but if we could, I think we all know Mrs. O'Connell, but just want to make a motion for that position.
Make a motion that we appoint Barbara O'Connell to the Wildwood Cemetery Committee for the term to expire May 31st, 2027.
All those in favor?
Do we get any material on this? Because I didn't.
Did we what?
I didn't get it. I didn't get any material
Nope.
on this
No,
applicant.
on this reappointment, we did not.
It's been kind of our practice for reappointments that we don't require the members to come in, and but for completely new applicants, we do, and then we go through an interview process. But if they are up for a reappointment, they've already gone through that public interview process.
That is 100% contradictory to the experience I was put through, so it's kind of.
Well, that was
strange.
just personal, Bill.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
that's very disappointing to hear. Mike,
No,
if that
no,
was
I'm
true.
joking, I'm joking.
But, I mean, I
People aren't dying to get on this committee.
no, they're not, but I don't feel right voting on something when I have no material on who the person is at all. So I'm not gonna oppose it, but I'll just abstain from this, because I just can't vote on something which I don't have any information on.
Okay.
Right, wasn't Mrs. O'Connell an English teacher for like 40 years in the Winchester school system? Yes, she was.
Indeed.
I attended one of those meetings last week. She's a terrific candidate.
I'm sure she's a fine person.
She is.
I just don't have any information, so.
She was the MC of the Memorial Day Parade and services, so I think you even met her.
Amongst other things. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, she's, you know,
She is
Yeah, you call
the
it
person
Memorial
who runs the, she runs our Veterans and Memorial Day Parades. Longtime teacher, longtime member.
Just as a general thing, I mean, would it be, for our reappointments, be helpful to see the original application in the packet if it's available?
If I had that, all my issues would be addressed. The thing is, I just don't have anything but a name.
So, yep, and I think, Patty, to the extent that some people have been on for a while, if we can reconstruct applications.
Yes.
Okay,
What I
reasonable.
do is that anyone who's up for reappointment, I send them an email or a letter and ask them to reply whether they wish to be
Right.
reappointed. When they respond, then I put them on the agenda to be reappointed. If they do not want to be reappointed, then when I post the position, I say no incumbents on the posting so that people know that it's not a reappointment, it's a vacant position. And it's, usually they're not submitting their application and their resume is in the folder.
Yep,
And let me make a distinction here as well. So if there are other people that are applying for the position, then we bring them both in for, interviews.
Yes.
That's the difference, right? But if there's nobody else applying but the incumbent, then
Yes.
we reappoint them without an interview. I don't know if that makes you feel any better. But,
It doesn't.
But certainly getting information, I mean,
yeah,
Ms. O'Connell's a bad example because she's, been, done so much for the community for, a very,
Decades.
very long time, decades and decades. And so, and is very engaged across a veterans community and other parts. So certainly with the Cemetery Advisory Committee.
yes. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. We have a request to package up for future reappointments, original applications, which is reasonable. So any other discussion? All those in favor? Bill?
I'm going to abstain.
Abstain, fair enough. Okay, so the next appointment is the Winchester Housing Authority, one position, one incumbent, looking to be reappointed.
To answer your question about June, the Winchester Housing Authority actually vetted out and put out, June is a tenant, and they sent out notification to all the tenants, and they had no one else responded. And so that's why she's just a reappointment.
Okay.
Thanks, Patty.
All right, I move that we reappoint June McGinnis to the Winchester Housing Authority for a term to expire March 27th, 2029.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll note March 27th is a really interesting exact date to
It's
end a term,
because,
but,
this position is also done on the 5-year election cycle. So March 27th, according to Mary Ellen, is when the election will be during that year in 2029.
okay. Townwide election, mark your calendars. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, same reason. I'm sure she's a wonderful person.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item we're going to take up is an update on Cross Street and Forest Street. We had Tool here and Matt, our engineer, a couple weeks ago. If you'd like to come to the table, we're going to then take up Climate Action Committee and Stretch Energy Code. We're going to quickly hear from the folks who are running the boxing event in November for a quick update. So we're going to slot that in after our third agenda item. But next up is Cross and Forest Street. So Matt and Erica, anybody else you brought along, come on up.
Just us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, go Celtics.
Say that all night.
Come on.
No updates, please, on the score unless it's of the meeting.
I'll
I don't
jump
want to
right in.
know.
So I know you have a packed agenda tonight, so I want to respect your time. I'm going to jump in. Feel free to jump in with any questions that you have on anything that I'm presenting as I go through. So thank you for having me back. I know we were here a couple weeks ago. We got some great questions from the public comment period, and we're looking to address some of those through some design changes and through some explanation this evening. So what we heard was quite a bit. These are the themes. Questions around the count data, desire for slower speeds, desire for no parking here to corner at 8789 Cross Street, which is just past the vet on Cross Street on the north side. concern for safety crossing Forest Street at the intersection, exploration of left turn restriction, looking at quick build materials or truck aprons, exploring a mini roundabout or a neighborhood traffic circle, and questions about cross at Holton Street, which is not part of this project, but I'll just give a quick update on that as well. I just wanted to share when the count data was, because I think there were a lot of questions about that, and we were kind of going back and forth, so I wanted to make sure that people were aware that the ATRs, which are kind of the tubes in the road that does the full day counts, were done in May of 2019. And the town engineer actually threw some tubes out there last week, and we got a little bit of additional data that confirms the speeds that I have on the screen here. They're actually eerily similar to 5 years ago. Average speed's about 28 miles per hour and 85th percentile, which is a kind of a standard engineering thing that we look at when we set speed limits, was 32. The turning movement counts, which is sort of getting which direction everyone's moving at the intersection, happened in December, early December, kind of before Christmas break and everything. And the peaks are listed on the screen for the kind of the morning and evening peak hour. Notably, there is like commuter traffic happening at the intersection, so during the day it kind of gets a little quieter, and then morning and evening it's a little heavier. I did look at a mini roundabout. I did want to explain in some detail that mini roundabouts are different than neighborhood traffic calming circles. There's a few things about them. One of the big things is the neighborhood traffic calming circle is literally a circle in the middle of the street. They don't change any of the approaches to the intersection. So you wouldn't have any kind of channelization. You wouldn't have any, when you're driving into traditionally people call them rotaries, but traffic circles, generally you want to kind of be deflected into the intersection. You slow down, you yield, you kind of look to your left. A neighborhood traffic calming circle is, I wouldn't touch anything, I would just drop a circle in the middle of the intersection. They actually allow trucks to take lefts in front of them in neighborhood traffic calming circles. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it's really for local streets meeting local streets. It's where you have a traffic calming issue and you're in kind of like buried in a neighborhood and they need to do something. That is not what you have here. You really have, a heavier volume street, a double yellow centerline street. So what you'd be looking at is a mini roundabout, which would have some of those channelizations. It certainly would be a little bit more robust to build. And the red dot I have on the screen is to show you the minimum diameter that you would need for a mini roundabout at this location. And so as you can see, it really doesn't fit at this intersection without some takings, mostly on the south side, because you wouldn't want to mess with the buildings and where people live on the north. So it doesn't really fit, and the neighborhood traffic calming circle is really not appropriate for this context. Some things that we looked at for the Forest Street crossing. The idea of a raised crosswalk came up. Flex posts, which are those kind of flexi posts that happen on the corners, truck aprons, and a refuge island is something that we kind of thought about too. So I'll run through these really quickly. The raised crosswalk is infeasible for a few reasons. Mostly, you don't have a lot of curb reveal on the corners. So you really wouldn't have a very effective raised crosswalk if you were to build it up to the corners, or you'd have to build the corners up. And then you're talking about grading and drainage challenges of building up the corners and then having to find somewhere for the water to go and regrading everything. Really tricky on the condo side because you've got steps that come right down to the corner. So you'd either have to build this thing to meet that step or to somehow make the step compliant. There's a certain height that is necessary for a stair. So you'd be messing with those stairs quite a bit, I think, if we started getting into this. So we consider that one fairly infeasible from a construction perspective. I think people came up with flex posts and truck aprons, which are great ideas if something else doesn't work, but it's we actually had the thought of the refuge island, which is an image on the screen, and we think that it can fit. So we're going to be leaning towards that as something that we think is a great countermeasure for safety at this location. I'll get to that. I'm going to get to the plans at the end. I'll show you what it looks like. So recommendations moving forward with the current design, which I'm going to pull up the plans in a moment and just call out the things that are different. But building a pedestrian refuge island across the Forest Street crossing, installing yield to pedestrian signage, installing the no parking signage at the corner with the driveway that a few people mentioned at the last meeting. Marking additional pavement markings along the curb line. I'll show you what those look like. Adding some additional clearance signage before the bridge and before the intersection. And installing advisory 20-mile-per-hour speed limit signage at the speed humps on Cross Street. So I'm going to really focus. There's 2 sheets for this plan set, but this is where a lot of the activity is happening. So the things that have changed, I kind of wish I circled, but the 20-mile-per-hour placards on the speed hump signage were added in since last time. You can have an advisory speed limit for the countermeasure that you're installing without changing the regulatory speed limit on the street, which I think is a great kind of way to further reduce speeds in this area, especially around those crosswalks. The turning vehicles yield to pedestrian sign, which is kind of on the south side by that green. That's a new sign that we're going to be putting in. The clearance sign is by the vet on the kind of northeast side of the intersection. The no parking signs on the edge there on the kind of the far right. And then the big thing is really, and I should have made it bright and beautiful, there's a traffic refuge island right in the middle of that crosswalk on Forest Street. So that allows, it's going to be about 6 feet wide, and that allows for pedestrian to step off the crossing, and they have that kind of refuge in between. I do believe that that's going to slow vehicles down turning quite a bit. It's a pretty noted traffic calming measure. So it'll have, if you're taking a left off of Cross Street onto Forest, you are required to behave and turn really thoughtfully and tightly, rather than you could kind of float across that center line and go across that crosswalk if you wanted to go fast. And then the right, the same thing in the other direction. You don't really want pedestrians to wait in the middle, but that is technically safe, a safe area for refuge if you needed to do a 2-stage crossing there as well. We did some additional markings along the south side as well with the kind of the grass green area that we're showing, where we're narrowing the street a little bit to ensure that people aren't parking there and but we need that space for fire trucks to be able to execute the turns properly. That's why it's not pulled out any further. I'll jump back to this one, as I'm sure there'll be questions. This one didn't change, aside from, I know that DPW mentioned that they will be installing some additional curbing by the gymnastics building. And then Cross at Holton is the other one I want to just touch on really quick. We did come in 2023 for this to the board, and we got approval to go forward. We're moving towards construction this summer. This one installs a rapid flashing beacon for crossing of Cross Street. It's a mouthful. On the the west side of Lowell and Holton Street intersection, where there's a crosswalk now, we'll have a rapid flashing beacon. New curbs or curb ramps for pedestrians, and kind of repairing some of that sidewalk in that area. In the intersection field itself, there's actually no stop signs for Holton Street or East Street right now, or stop bars. Those are all getting installed. There's no curbs there at all right now. Those are all going to get curb ramps, so the curb ramps will be installed. There'll be a proper crosswalk across East Street. And then we're doing do not block the box markings within the intersection field to hopefully discourage some bad behavior. But I believe that the stop signs being on stop control on both of those streets is going to help a lot with kind of the safety and ambiguity of the intersection that you have now. Those are the major changes that are happening at that location. So just wanted to describe those.
Can I ask there, the mammoth tooth in the middle? Is that just painted?
This right here?
Yeah. Or is that, I know last time we talked about, is there just some material that
So it's a material change. It's like that lumpy concrete, kind of stamped concrete.
Yep.
It can't be officially a refuge island because
the trucks couldn't.
the trucks look like this. So we talked about a bunch of different ideas there. We actually tested it out with DPW and the town engineer. We had those bollards out there. We put those kind of fake median islands in there with the barrels, and then throughout the day we had to move them to let trucks pass through. And so it is a challenging location. We wanted to do more. I think we're doing as much as we can, and I do think it will be a safer intersection to pass and a lot more compliant to walk through and access with the rapid flashing beacon. But yeah, the center is going to be kind of bumpy concrete, so it's not officially a refuge island, and we don't want it to look like one because it's not really safe to wait there. But it will, slow the typical vehicles down that don't need to drive over it. And the next steps are the same as last time, so that's my presentation. Thank you.
So I just wanted to note the clearance sign is it's closer to Kidstock and the vet, not because we already have clearance signs as you're approaching the bridge from Cross, so. Abandon all hope now? Is that the idea? Turn onto Cross Street?
We'd rather you turn on Forest there if you've made it this far, which you've already gone through multiple other signs at that point, rather than we've seen people turning in the sports complex. So it avoids that, crosswalk and maybe the speed hump. So
Is the technology out there? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Because I remember this in Star Drive, that
Starrowing,
it
yes.
just takes a laser or something and shoots the top of the vehicle, and then,
Yeah.
100 feet away says you're over height.
If you, yeah, I mean,
No,
there
just
there are,
wondering,
there are
is it-
things like that, yeah, and, I mean, DCR was using cowbells, so you could just string some cowbells.
Yeah, no, that's too late. No, but like the advanced warning, that's all. That's all.
Yeah, they do have some of that stuff, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's very advanced of DCR to use cowbells.
I've always wondered, like, can we back that up even more and have some sort of like local truck access only there? I think it's worse coming the other way with trucks getting there and then needing to back up than coming this way, because it's a little bit of an easier out, but just
So I think,
nip it at the butt over and over.
yeah, I was going to say thank you. It certainly seems like it reflects several of the concerns that we heard a couple weeks back. So thank you for that. Other questions?
I mean, I appreciate the change to forest. I know a lot of folks brought that up last time, myself included. And I continue to feel, and every time I drive it, honestly, I think like I know as a pedestrian that there's a really serious blind spot for cars, and I know that cars coming through are not all of them pedestrians there to recognize that. My other question is like, is there opportunity at some point for there to be a beacon on Forest as well? Just to keep that visibility there like it is with the cross-street crossing.
I don't typically recommend beacons for stop-controlled intersections. I'd have to look at the METCD to confirm if that's a compliant use or not, but typically if there's stop control on one side, you don't do a beacon at the intersection. I know that the old signs that were there, I don't know if you've seen, I know on Street View at least, there were signs at that intersection, and that is not a compliant use of the signs. So I imagine that would go for the rapid flashing beacon as well.
And then where the speed humps are, I know you've talked before about sort of those lines that kind of slow people down, and one of the issues that many folks talk about is that you come down Forest and you just kind of like keep going through that intersection despite the stop sign, of whether there's any pavement markings that.
Like the optical speed bars that we talked about before?
Kind of where folks are coming down Forest to cross.
Could certainly look at it. It's like, I feel like that's typically, I can pull up the visual just to look at the distance there. It would maybe mess with the kind of painted curb extensions that I'm doing right now. So it could be kind of visually overwhelming, though I typically reserve the optical speed bars when you're just on kind of a free-flowing two-lane street. Like further up cross, they might make a little more sense, where you kind of have that really straight shot, or if you had any curves in the road. I think we're kind of doing a lot here, so it could be a little bit visually overwhelming.
Do you mean like on Woodside, we did, in the approach to the speed hump, we did lines?
Yeah, that's-
like,
Oh, so you're talking,
it
sorry.
started,
But
Talking about the inside of the
where
lane and
that
not on the
little
edge.
wider, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of like in the lane as you come down.
Yeah,
like,
okay,
you
sorry,
know,
thank
come
you.
around the corner and then there's just to get you stopping.
I still feel like we have kind of a lot of markings at the moment with this one, but it's totally possible if that's what people want to do.
Other questions?
Just one or two, maybe. And this is because I'm the last guy to everything right now. I wasn't here when this project started. I didn't ask this last time. What actually was the mission here?
So I believe that it got triggered by Eversource is what had started. But back when I did a traffic calming study for Cross Street, maybe 5, maybe even more years ago at this point. So we're kind of pulling from the data that we got. I guess the 2019 counts are probably from when I did that study. So 5 years ago, we did a study look at traffic calming for all of Cross Street, and now Eversource is doing work here, so we have an opportunity to apply some of those findings and, modifying a little bit. And part of it is really like the condition of the sidewalk is kind of where this started, making that feel more comfortable, filling gaps in the sidewalk, adding curb where there's missing curb, and looking at where people are parking and trying to make it a little safer for it to happen officially.
Okay. It sounds then that this
Few
was
things.
a bit of a drift of a project then. And, I was most curious because you used the term, it wasn't warranted to do this or that before.
Yeah.
did we come at this with the top priority being increased pedestrian safety? And was that our guiding star as you were looking at all these different potential enhancements? Or was your priority move traffic as fast as possible? So this seems like a really silly question, but
No.
I think those are very important questions
No,
to ask from the start, and I wasn't here for that.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. That's a great question. I would say it's funny. I've been supporting Winchester for a few years now, and when we started our first project, I said, "What is the goal of this project?" And they were like, "Pedestrian safety is the #1 priority, no matter what." And that has not that is consistent for every project that I do for this town. I feel like that doesn't change. So that's #1, and so that's why, I mean, honestly, I'm really happy that we had the public process, and that I think the island there is going to be a huge benefit, and it's not something we thought about. So I think pedestrian safety, pedestrian access, ADA compliance, that's all stuff that went into this. And traffic calming makes those crosswalks safer, which is why those humps are happening right around the crosswalk.
Okay. So then, with that stated, in your professional opinion, is this the best we can do for pedestrian safety at this intersection, given the requirements and constraints put upon us by the geometry of it and everything else?
The best.
Because I don't want to leave anything on the table.
Yeah. That's a good question. That's a tough question for me to answer with not enough information to I mean, I think like within the parameters of what would be palatable, yes. I mean, I don't want to start talking about changing access and changing restrictions, and I'm really not an advocate for streets that are for resident only, because then you get into enforcement and things like that. These are public streets. I think this is going to be a huge improvement for this location.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you for your work on this, Erica. This is, a great improvement. I think very responsive to what we heard from the neighborhood as well. And, also on the Holton piece there. I mean, people always ask us, why do we have traffic engineers? And, when you look at that, cross at Holton, intersection, I mean, it is just impossible to try to figure out a solution there with how many trucks we have going through there and all that. So I think that is well done. So thank you. I had mentioned the roundabout over the Forest and Cross intersection, just because I don't love crosswalks. I feel like they can create an additional level of danger with people not paying attention and all that. I think I mentioned that last time. And, I like kind of a physical impediment to actually slow people down. And I've seen those roundabouts at varying sizes, right? I think I mentioned last week, saw one in Lexington recently that was even kind of, you can drive over it. It was, a center island with cobblestone around the edge. So most people won't go on the cobblestone, but if you're an Amazon truck or somebody flying through, I mean, that's the reality of a lot of our neighborhoods now. I think it's helpful, especially on that cross street run there, that seems like there's no real impediment to speed until you get past where the Tri-Community Bikeway kind of empties
Sort of the
out.
Main Street side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, that area is just still very uncomfortable for me, so, I'd rather see something that, on the cross street, I guess, kind of east of, Forest Street, that way, that, we could do something to really slow people down, that would be my only, request of it, so.
Yep, and I know we're looking at providing a marking plan, at least at minimum, for the full corridor. So it'll not cover this part that we've already done, but kind of looking to the west towards Main Street. We'll be providing that as well to make sure it's cohesive.
Erica, I got an email today, a note today from a neighbor on Cross Street, further up, right, kind of past the condos, maybe where the new power box is going in. So beyond that, so understand there's a striping plan, potentially a rapid flashing beacon near McDonald Field.
Yep.
So, and that to try to mitigate or at least make, speeds and center lines little more obvious, because we are paving the length of Cross Street, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think we're looking tonight for a motion to sort of move forward with this design, this updated design, and proceed. I don't want to put words in the engineer's mouths, Matt, so what is it that, is that the appropriate motion to move forward with this design?
Yeah, I think we're looking for an endorsement of this design so that we can further it and get it implemented.
Okay.
Do we need to hear from the public, or is that it?
Nope.
Can you read it?
Oh, Patty says, move to approve Tool Designs' current Cross Street at Forest Street design with updated as presented this evening.
Any additional discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I vote yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
so
job,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be climate action. And I think Patty probably has a presentation to throw up for you.
Would you like us to start or wait?
Should probably move the chair.
Yeah.
Give him a minute.
Yeah.
No, we can start.
Please, where to start? Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Select Board, for meeting with us tonight on this new construction energy code. And I also like to thank each of you individually, because I believe everyone has looked at this and met with members of our team to understand it, and it's really appreciated. And really, thank you very much for doing that. I'd like to introduce Josh Bears, a member of our committee who is leading this effort on behalf of our committee. He's working closely with Ken Pruitt on this. We have a couple other members of our committee with us tonight. Ruth Trimarchi's here, Rachel Chisdy's here. You met Vita. Vita's here, and as Catherine as well. So we have some student representatives here as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh, and Tom's here too. So Ken will introduce. Yeah, okay, yeah. Josh.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. And congratulations to Vita on becoming a voting member. It's been great having her on the committee as a non-voting member. I look forward to her contributions. And so I'll just mention that I'm also a Precinct 7 town meeting member. And nice to be here this evening to talk to you about the new construction energy code, which we think is a great opportunity for Winchester. And how do I move forward here? So just an overview of what I'll be presenting. I'll be presenting the new construction energy code and providing a summary of the rationale of why we should adopt it as a town, and answer any questions that may come up during the discussion about the code. Then we'll talk about a proposed path to bring this to a fall town meeting vote. And we'd like the select board to be the sponsor or co-sponsor of the warrant article for the town meeting. And just to emphasize, the CAC has a silent A in it. We're a Climate Action Advisory Committee, and so our role is really to advise the select board on actions to take that will help us to meet our climate action plan from 2020, which really has a north and south star, as I call them. The North Star is to increase resilience of the town to climate change. And the South Star, so-called, is to reduce carbon emissions. So we're trying to go down in that direction and increase resilience in the other direction. Let's move forward here. So what are the current energy code options for Winchester? There's a base code that isn't relevant for us because I think in 2009 we adopted the stretch code, and 299 other communities, or 298 other communities in Massachusetts, have adopted this code, and you become a green community with the adoption of that code. And so we are currently a green community. That code can modify from time to time, and the most recent update was a 2023 update on that, What we're talking about is the new construction energy code, which applies to new buildings, and 44 communities in Massachusetts have already adopted it, including 3 of our neighboring towns. And that's what we're going to dig into tonight. So what is the new construction energy code? And I'll just note that in the Massachusetts law, actually, it's called the Specialized Stretch Energy Code. So for reasons of, we could never keep the name straight between the stretch and the specialized stretch, we said, let's call it the New Construction Energy Code because it actually only applies to new construction, not major renovations nor additions. And so the sort of summary about the new code is if you're building a new house that's all electric, doesn't use fossil fuels for heating or cooking, there's no difference with the current code. So you go all electric, you don't have to change anything. If you do mixed fuel homes, so you decide you want to have either oil or gas to heat or cook, then it requires installation of solar panels and pre-wiring for future electric conversion. So it's kind of a consumer protection in that sense. And for large homes, there's an additional requirement to fully offset the fuel use with solar. There's also a commercial side of it that they call large multifamily buildings, which are buildings over 12,000 square feet, need to meet the passive house standard, which is extra insulation compared with the other lower standards. And the proposed waterfield development would meet this standard. So moving on, the next 2 slides are a bit of eye charts because they dig into the actual details of the code, but what to focus on these 2 slides is anywhere where it's black text, it's no change versus the current code that Winchester's on. Red is where there's change, and the theme that I mentioned before is if you go all electric, you can see there's no change for dwelling. These are for residential units, houses under 4,000 square feet. And then if you use mixed fuels, you have to pre-wire for electric in the future and add solar. And there's some exceptions for shaded sites, or if you reach an even higher standard of insulation, you don't need to do the solar. And then you go down to the dwellings greater than 4,000 square feet, all electric, again, it's no difference. And then dwellings greater than 4,000, you have to offset all your carbon fuel usage with solar. And moving forward, this is the commercial side of it. And again, it's the same theme. Things that are all electric, no change. If you mixed fuel, you have to pre-wire and add solar. 2 things to just point out here. Schools, there's no impact, no change on schools if you are all electric. So for example, Lynch, which is all electric, there's no change to the codes. If you use mixed fuel, again, there's solar. Lynch, we're hitting out of the park. We're doing solar and we're all electric. So we're well above this standard. And then you can see the multifamily, there's actually no requirement for solar, and I think this is somewhat of a nod to keeping affordable housing units, not adding extra burden on them. So moving forward, what's the rationale? Why should we adopt this as a town? As I mentioned, our South Star is reducing carbon emissions, carbon pollution created by the town. And so this helps us to meet our goal in the Climate Action Plan of reducing the town's emissions by 80% by 2050. The other great thing about this code is it has negligible difference in construction costs. And in fact, the operating costs are lower, as we'll see, due to the better insulation standards that are required. And we've learned for early adopters, the 44 communities, we've spoken with them and gotten early feedback that's been positive. And so we're not out front here, we're in the leading edge, but we're not the bleeding edge of this new code. And last but not least, it allows for additional state funding to Winchester. So I'll walk through these one at a time, these 4. And so here's the greenhouse gas reduction. You can see that in the 2017 inventory, 63% of the entire town carbon emissions of 175,000 tons of CO2, 63% of them are just from heating and cooling buildings. And when you divide the The source of that between residential versus commercial, you can see 76% is residential, commercial 18, municipal very small, 3%. So by applying a code like this that applies to both commercial, residential, municipal, we're really biting off that entire 63% is something we can impact with this code. So what are the economics of all electric homes? It's quite compelling. The cost difference is negligible. All electric homes are generally cheaper to build because you have to use the electrical, but you don't need as much plumbing for gas. And the heat pump can replace both the AC and the furnace. And then operating costs are lower because of the efficiency of heat pumps compared with oil or gas. It saves you money over time. As I mentioned, Winchester is not the first community here, and Arlington, Lexington, and Medford are neighboring towns that have adopted this. And early feedback from those communities is very positive. I think, Ken, you've had some interaction with them. Anything to go into details?
Yeah, I've spoken with the communities who adopted first and also the second round, because this is happening on an ongoing basis. And essentially what I've been hearing from Tom's counterparts in other communities is that there really has been no issue with implementation. At the very beginning in July of 2023, when the code was brand new, in some of the communities, builders were unfamiliar with it. It took a little while before they sort of knew what was required of them. But going forward, essentially you're still building homes very much the same way you've been building homes. There's some modification to your considerations on the heating and cooling system, basically. You're putting in a heat pump, not just for AC, but also for heat, to be all electric, or if you want to build with fossil fuels, as you have been before, you still can. You just have to pre-wire for future electrification to make it easier and put some solar on the roof. So it's not really that different.
Would you say pre-wire? Is it pre-wire? Let's say you have a gas stove, pre-wire gas stove, pre-wire, dryer, pre-wire. Are those the things you're talking about, pre-wiring, or what does that, because pre-wiring sounds like it's really big, but I don't really think it's that big. I think it's a few items.
Yeah, like for example, there are some builders who say, no problem with using a heat pump for heating and cooling, but a lot of my clients really want to cook with gas. I'm not going to give up the gas. And so what you do there is you make room in the electrical panel and have sufficiently sized wire go right to where the range is, and you just have an unused plug behind the gas range. When it's time, in the future to swap it out, you just pull it out and plug in an electric range.
Thank you.
But then you don't have to do all that work 10 years down the line when you want to switch from gas to electric.
Yeah, you don't have to tear your house apart.
Yeah.
The plug's
It's not a
already there.
deterrent for you doing it, yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry, you gave me there, but sort of.
Thanks, Ken.
That's a good question.
So moving on, as I mentioned, not the least reason to adopt this code is that it opens up helps to unlock state funding for Winchester. In fact, the adoption of this code is a prerequisite to become a climate leader, which is kind of the next level of green communities. There's some other items that also we need to put in place, planning, but this is the only one that requires going to town meeting and adopting, having it pass the town meeting. So that's why we're starting with this. It makes the town eligible for more grants, including municipal building energy efficiency and electrification refits. So think of the Mystic School, where we need more funds to improve the heating and cooling there. This could help with that. The level is not set yet, but we estimated between 100 and 200K additional beyond what we get for being a green community in terms of applying for grants. Another piece is that new schools that meet the new construction energy code are entitled to an additional 3% MSBA reimbursement. And so Lynch qualifies, and the new Morocco could qualify as well. So our proposed next steps are we're starting, stakeholder outreach with the select board, obviously, most important, then moving on to committees like school committee, EFPBC, EMC, working with in-town developers and builders, holding info sessions to the public, And continuing our research on what's the impact of this in terms of early adopters, talking, I think, with other towns to see how the impact has been and validating any costs or impacts on builders. And then ultimately, we'd love the select board to sponsor a warrant article at this fall's town meeting to pass this or take a vote to adopt it as a town. So wanted to open it up to any questions or comments or thoughts here.
So I'll start. Collaborate for town meeting. If you don't get co-sponsorship from the select board, you still intend to put a warrant article on, I imagine, as the Climate Action Committee? Too soon to tell, okay.
We intend to. It would be ideal if the select board were with us on this. And I think how many communities can the select board or the select board equivalent has brought it forward? At least?
Yeah, of the 44 communities that we've looked at that have adopted it so far, just from an informal outreach that I sent to those communities, already 10 came back and said the select board was the sponsor. So at least 10 of the 44 communities had the select board as the sponsor. And then an additional 5, it would have been the city council, so similar. And then the rest, I'm not sure, because they didn't respond.
In terms of another question, I think there's the tables when you come back, or maybe in the outreach, right? There's the 4,000 square foot mixed use.
Right.
When we spoke last week, Rick and Ken, it sounds like there's triggers, right? If you're doing an addition of a certain size. So it's not just the 4,000 square foot new construction, but this applies to existing dwellings?
No, this is purely new construction. So if you raised a house to the
Okay.
ground and you built it, then it would apply. If it's an addition to an existing house, it doesn't apply.
If I may, I think what you're referring to is, in our conversation, I had brought up that there is some controversy around energy codes right now, but it's mostly the regular stretch energy code, which includes this provision that if you put in an addition over 1,000 square feet or modify more than 50% of the existing structure, you have to bring the entire original structure up to the new energy efficiency standards required in the code, which can be very expensive, as I'm sure.
And that's our existing code.
That's already the
stretch
code in Winchester today, yeah.
Right.
So we're looking at this as part of a process. Thank you for your time in reviewing this. And as we say on the bottom here, are there other things that you would add to our to-do list for the next few months as we continue our reach out, we continue our analysis, so that we hope to come back to you in the October timeframe to share that back with you? And that's the guidance we would like tonight, no vote or anything this evening.
I think one other thing for building commissioner or other towns, cities and towns as well, is impact on building permits, up, down, sideways, any delay or patterns of building activity that we can compare ourselves to. 44 out of 351 communities it's still a pretty small sample. So if we were the 45th community, there's not a ton of peers, but whatever you could see from building permit activity, and even like green community grants, I appreciate that opportunity, but that's still competitive, right? That's not an earmark, that's not a guarantee. So have they leveraged additional green community grants, and how successful have they been? I think those are two kind of financial questions I would look at you guys to bring back. And then I don't have any more questions.
I had about 2 hours of questions, but I already asked them.
I think Mike does, but go
yeah.
ahead, Bill, and then Mike.
No, I Ken gave me a morning, answered a ton of my questions. I think this is a wonderful initiative. I've already told him what I would like him to look into and the information that I think would be helpful to get this done. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity both to look forward towards climate planning and also affordability. I think affordable housing means a whole lot, and for some people, houses are not affordable because of the cost of having to renovate them. And this seems to be a way of curbing those costs in the future when things become more and more electrified. So I think this addresses a lot of the needs of the town, a lot of the needs just of our society and communities. So thank you for bringing it forward, and I'm happy to keep working with you guys on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you for coming in and bringing this. I think this is in the select board's lane. I hope that we do sponsor a warrant article. I think what can help sometimes on the public conversation side is to maybe, and I know that it's kind of a tall request for some communities, but if there's somebody from another community that can come in that is somewhat comparable or really give us specifics like, hey, we were freaked out about this initially, and then it turned out that builders got on board right away, and there was a little bit of a learning curve, but now it's going well and something that people are familiar with, and so those conversations to kind of put people at ease, because I think you're right on the marketing side of things to change it to new construction energy code. I think that's right. That makes sense. So, because I think, people hear stretch or they hear whatever and it's unfamiliar to them and they think energy code means I can't do the things to my house that I want to do. And it's really kind of the opposite. It's really just kind of future proofing, homes and really taking that deterrent away from electrical usage. So thank you. I think, and this is a great presentation, a lot of information, so I look forward to supporting it. And, as Bill said, and anything that we can do to help, certainly would like to.
And for the board, we'll see you, back here in September, I think, as we're pulling together the warrant. And, you can report back on these findings. So more to come. Go ahead.
I just want to add kudos to the committee. Sounds like each of us spoke with somebody different on the committee, and so I appreciate that there's been like a very clear development of how to articulate this, and the questions I had were great question, and here's the answer, because we knew that would come up. So I think certainly the background work that went into it is very strong and very clear of what this is intended to do and how it's intended to work.
Thank you.
Good.
So yeah, burned all my questions on the call as Bill did.
Yeah, away from the camera. One thing I'll add that I didn't ask before or suggest before, if you're coming back in September, maybe as part of that presentation, come with a suggestion as to how we're going to educate town meeting about this, if it is going to go forward on the warrant in November. I think the planning board did an incredible job with the MBTA 3A outreach that they did. I'm not saying this is necessary for everything that we put out there, but maybe as you talk to other towns, Ken, you already told me that it's passed pretty overwhelmingly in those 40-something communities, but that doesn't mean we want to go into our town meeting just assuming people will vote in favor of it. So coming with a plan as to how to make sure people know what this is and they can understand it and go into town meeting fully educated, I think will be a very helpful part of that follow-up presentation.
Absolutely. Yep.
Can I ask one question? If this was to come to fall town meeting, what would you expect the effective date would be?
July 1st, 2025.
25.
That's we can pick whatever, the communities can pick whatever date they want, but DOER has strongly recommended putting it at the next, either January 1st or July 1st. That's at least 6 months later than the vote.
After.
Just to allow time for education.
Good question. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
So this is one thing, thank you very much for your work, it's excellent. I'm just unhorribilize one term in there and define it, which is pre-wire. It's probably only 5 things or 6 things, because people's imaginations can run wild, like mine did.
Redundancies and.
Yeah, it's really just talking about very, few appliances and maybe one other thing, so it's not this astronomical cost, and as people move from gas stoves and to electric, it's gonna be simple for them.
I think it's heating and cooking would be the two. Not necessarily anything else, and cooling. So if you went with
The dryer.
gas for heat or cooling for whatever reason.
A gas dryer.
Or your dryer.
So that's what the
Heavy
conversation is.
appliance.
Heavy appliance.
That could use fossil fuels would have to.
There you go.
have a conduit to the.
But you just identify it versus having people go through their minds. It's just gonna be easier. It's gonna eliminate a lot of questions, and that's sort of the point.
Absolutely, good point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Hey,
very much.
thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Climate folks exit. And then Mr. Goodrich, if you would like to come up and give us maybe a brief update on boxing event in November. And if there's any, I'll let you join us. Thanks.
My buddy Al. Celtics are up by 12, just to give you guys a
Oh,
quick little
all right,
update.
well, I did allow
You guys
good
T-voted.
news, only good updates, so
Okay.
thank you for that.
All right, Paul Goodrich, 4 Lockland Road, with the Winchester Sports Foundation, Winchester First Responders Fund. Things are going great, progressing very well. Just wanted to come in front of you guys and let you know where we are. We walked the auditorium today with 3 local West Point grads. They're very enthusiastic about it. They've been doing outreach to all the local Boston cadets, business owners and stuff on sponsorship opportunities, and they're wildly successful, looking forward to the event. We're gonna meet with some people on how do we do a very elegant, proper military event with the color guard and the national anthem and all the right things to really honor the military. And the entire West Point team's coming, as well as the Coast Guard Academy, perhaps the Naval Academy, as well as a few NCAA boxing clubs. So we're really looking forward to it. It's been an overwhelming, people are really excited about it, and we just wanted to come in front of you guys and let you know where we are. And Al, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I'd like to take a minute. First of all, thanks for seeing us again. The event is no stranger to this town. We've had a few of them here, and that's how we built the career of this fine Winchester young man, Luca LeConte Botis, who attended West Point. It all came together because he was boxing at the Somerville Boxing Club, came to an event here, and here we are, 7 years later. He's one of the finest young men I've ever met. The NCBA is the provider of the event, along with USA Boxing. The NCBA is the National College Boxing Association, made up of 34 schools, including West Point, Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, and Coast Guard Academy. That evening, we will feature a team from West Point boxing the other schools. So it's quite a pageantry, so to speak, and it's around Veterans Day. The setup is familiar to us. I have, for anyone that wants to see it, we have a grid now made for the room, and it's much like we did in the past here. But this event is much different only because it's a sold-out event with sponsors, so the crowd is smaller. We're under like 380 people in the room. Well, I talked today with Mr. Betancourt about security. We're probably going to have a few more because we have West Point grads and Navy grads and all the grads there, so we'll have a couple of bars there, and it's nothing that we haven't done before. I don't have much else to say other than it's been a pleasure for me to be involved with Paul Manganaro in the Winchester Field Development Council. We did some magical things there, and this one's a little bit different because it's a much bigger cause. And we have some celebrity guests. We're flying in Ray Mercer, who won the 1988 gold medal, and then he served in the military for 6 years and won a heavyweight championship. Mickey Ward will be here from Lowell. We all know Mickey. He's the fighter, and it should be a fun night. I really have nothing to say other than it's a great opportunity for me to be part of a great event.
Great. So are there any, it sounds like we're going to need to approve a one-day, you're looking for a one-day liquor license at some point. Are there other actions to sort of grant access to the room? Is there any other permissions that you need from us and a timeline by which you'd like to have? Usually we don't do liquor licenses months and months out, but certainly we'd have to do the paperwork. But is there any other approval that you're seeking from us that,
Once I file what's called a sanction with USA Boxing, which has already been done, we notified the Mass State Boxing Commission. They approved. I got the seating code from the town. That's all done. The liquor license is something I don't get into. I will get into the police detail and the EMT and whatever else we might need. The timeline basically is when you say go, we're going. So we're at that point. We're on the starting line here. And there is a little bit of a timeline where we decide when we actually announce the event. So once we have your good blessings, we'll have a much larger announcement. This is a soft announcement right now. But everything is in place. So all we really need is to hear your good words.
the approval to
Let's go.
use the space? So a post-Labor Day timeframe, September for a November event? Does
Well, I
that
would
sound
think
realistic?
earlier. I would like to think maybe as early as August.
Yeah, the universities need to busing, hotels, everything. They need to
Yeah.
kind of, there's a lot of logistics that go into those universities and academies to get here, so.
Okay.
Whatever you guys need, we're more than
No, I
happy
think this
to-
is helpful. I mean, we're going to a summer, we're going to be meeting a little bit less frequently, but just understanding, certainly the university thing, and semesters will be in, people will be back in school end of August, so that's helpful to know how we can work our agenda to try to get something moving. And we may have questions for you, but that's good to know. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll be quick. And also just to mention that local restaurants are going to be participating and supporting the event quite substantially, right?
Yeah, we have 4 restaurants that are going to do pre-fight dinners. So I think we're going to feed close to 300 people at pre-fight dinners at Atavola, Versailles Pub, Black Horse Tavern, and Lucia's.
Nice.
In the past, it was a public event for the Winchester Field Development Council,
Mm-hmm.
so we sold tickets to the public. This is actually a pre-sold event. And I hear and I believe, after meeting some West Pointers today, that this event is already, I can say as a boxing promoter, it's sold out. And that's a
Nice.
good thing.
And we definitely allocated some space for the, some people from local charities, and we're definitely gonna allocate money to Winchester First Responders Fund, Winchester Sports Foundation, the ABC, as well as the Anchor Food Bank, so.
Okay.
And if anyone in the town is interested, with the USA Boxing sanction comes insurance that I've indemnified Mara Auditorium as I did in the past, and the
Yep.
town. It's, I think the policy is 1 million and 1 million, but if anyone requires extra insurance, we can certainly provide it.
Okay.
And there'll be a
Thank you.
there'll be a sanctioned doctor, right?
Yes.
Let's hope so.
I use Nolan Brothers Boxing out of Waltham. They're a great group of guys, and they will be here overseeing it for USA Boxing. And there is a doctor assigned to the show who's a certified, a Massachusetts physician who works the shows regularly.
Yep. Okay.
That's where we're at.
So I think, and I'm not even going to let Bill ask a question, maybe I will, but I think to the extent that we've done this before, I know you did in the same auditorium, to the extent that we want to just maybe package up, all the same conditions, all the same, police detail, medical, insurance, all the things. I think when we come back in August, we'll work on a date and just, we have that as information we can go off of, right? All the boxes you've checked, how it lines up with what we've done before. And then I think we can make sure if we have any questions from us, we'll get those to you in
And
advance.
if you would like a packet, I'll have the
That'd be great.
insurance writer, the sanction, a few other specifics that you
Yep.
might need to know.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
And we'll be in touch. Any questions, Beth?
No, I would just encourage to submit that information as soon as possible so that we can review it with staff and make sure that everything's in order for
Absolutely.
the August timeframe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much.
All right.
Thank you.
Next up, Mystic School Heat. I was thinking, Beth, I was going to maybe give an update, and if you want to jump in and
Sure.
correct us.
Yep.
I think we had Weston and Sampson here a couple weeks ago. We have a meeting with Weston and Sampson tomorrow with some school committee folks, with Pete, with others. There's the design that they presented, and there's some questions people have about how does this design that we saw a few weeks back, how does that help the people in the annex where they had the portable heaters? So we're going to go through some of those questions tomorrow, and I want to just elevate if people here at our table had additional questions. We're going to try to put Weston and Sampson, Meg White will be there, Pete will be there, Chris Nixon will be there, schools will be there. We're trying to get all of their questions answered. If we have additional questions on that design and who's impacted, that kind of thing, I want to just elevate those tonight so we can get those to Weston and Sampson tomorrow, or to Pete or to Meg tomorrow. We didn't ask Pete to sit here and answer our questions here and then do it again tomorrow at 11 a.m. But we'll talk about this topic for however long it takes, and then meet tomorrow. Thursday, I talked with Karen, school committee this morning. School committee tends to have a meeting on Thursday, and we'll take this up. They've not taken an official position on Mystic School Heat, right? Sort of permission for us to do the work on their building. They expect to discuss it on Thursday. Obviously, there's no guarantee of moving forward with approval, but they plan to take it up this week. So when we met 2 weeks ago, it was, hey, what do schools know about this? What do they think about this? Have they taken a position on this? The answer is, as a full body, they have not yet taken a position on this, but they will be meeting on Thursday, and we should have a disposition by the end of the week. And I believe the select board chair, select board rep to EFPBC, superintendent, or the business manager are all going to be part of this meeting tomorrow with Mystic School Heat as the specific topic. So we're hoping to get some closure this week. And Beth, I will turn it to you if there's probably some additional details. I'm glossing over here.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of covers the update. I would just ask the board, since we're not meeting again until July 15th, if you're willing to take a conditional vote for us to move forward, conditioned on the school committee's approval of the project going forward, so that I can get Weston Sampson going as soon as possible to finish the design. As we talked about at the last meeting, we have a very short timeline if we want to get this project out to bid, September, October timeframe, so that we can get the funds, ARPA funds, in place by the end of the year, so.
Oh, and I forgot one other update, which is we were polling you all about a joint meeting with school committee this week. As of Friday, and in talking with Karen this morning, we don't need to pull the two bodies together. We're having our meeting tonight. The school committee is going to meet on Thursday. The school committee had asked for a joint meeting, and then as of Friday, decided to pull that back. They think they can take it up themselves. They plan to have a topic on their meeting on Thursday. So we're not looking to meet Thursday evening or Thursday afternoon as our body. That need has passed. So any questions on either the approach or any questions on the design that we saw 2 weeks ago from Weston and Sampson that we want to sort of bring back to Weston and Sampson, because we do have an opportunity to ask those questions tomorrow. So just to go around our table on that one.
So I'll jump in. I'm not comfortable giving approval for this project at this point. I just have more questions. I just can't get my mind around $900,000 for heating. I don't know that we need to heat the entire building. I'm still not clear, room by room, which ones need heating and which ones don't. It hasn't been articulated. So until I understand that and what the solution is, and is it possible to design to a number? They were given a number of 900,000. Okay, I don't know where that came from. Maybe it came from one of our previous discussions here at the board. But what can we do for half of that? Is that going to be sufficient? Is it going to last 5 years or 10 years? Because we really don't know what the use of that building is going to be 5 years from now. So that's just where my brain's at on that.
Okay, and I promised that I would be the note taker on the questions, so I've got two. Thank you. I'll start on this side.
I don't have any new questions. I think the questions would be if there's more clarity on sort of some specifics to the timeline, how they're addressing timelines for asbestos work and how that would need to be covered. And to me, the biggest piece of this is where we're at if something fails, either while this while this work is in progress and something fails within the building and so there's not heat, and that could be just sort of as we're getting into the winter season and maybe not that bad, but versus where we are if we don't move forward and something fails midway through, whether that is we can't continue to have programs there, or do we have backup contingency plan if there's a failure and we're not ready for it.
Okay. To my knowledge, there is no backup plan, but we can certainly ask Nick that. Okay. Anthea? Okay. I don't want to move past you if you have.
No, I think that's it. I mean, I think we recognize we have to do something to make this building operational for the winter time, and it would be good to have an idea of the scope of what is the reasonable lifespan. I think we did get something last time on how long that might be, but then where we're going to go from there. We're going to have to think of what the next iteration of full heating and cooling is for that building if it's still in operation.
Okay.
I don't have any questions about the engineering. I get it based on the past presentations. I think my questions are more about the financial sense of the thing, how it builds into the VFA program that we've been introduced to now. And if I understood one of the handouts that we were provided in prep for today, is the plan to cover this all with ARPA funds right now?
So that's the board had set aside 900,000. The preliminary estimate you heard about the project from last week is a little bit higher, around, I think, 1.1. Hopefully, as they get further into design, that number might come down a bit. You also have a little bit of cushion in your ARPA funds, about, 250, where we haven't even earmarked it for anything. So that we're kind of in striking distance, I think, with ARPA funds.
Okay, and I understand we have to spend, might not be the right word, but spend the ARPA funds by the end of the year, have them allocated?
To commit.
Obligate 'em.
Committed, okay.
Which means you have to have a signed contract.
And so that means we have a deadline of sometime in the fall to have all the ARPA funds contracted out?
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to give ourselves a little buffer, right? So if we bid a project and number comes in higher than we expect, or we have a bid protest or something, right? We need to have a little bit of buffer that we're not bidding a project in December and then having to have a contract.
Yeah,
signed
but
by
the
end
ARPA
of the
funds
year.
are then use it or lose it, in a
Yes.
sense?
Correct.
Yes.
And is there anything else that would be competing for these funds right now?
Maybe a library windows.
Yeah, library windows,
Yep.
which might be addressable through some of the grants that the new energy code can do. But I asked Ken to look into that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and just on the kind of use it or lose it, question there, we can vote to use those ARPA funds on another capital project that we have, and then have the extra money in the stabilization fund to use for something else if the timeline doesn't. So it's very unlikely that we wouldn't, be able to use all of the ARPA funds.
Sure.
We can use it for operating expenses. We can use it. So it's fairly broad. So I'm uncomfortable with moving forward with it because I do have a lot of questions. I was surprised that the solution that is being recommended is only a 5-year time period, and that for me, when we're using ARPA funds, which is money even on the federal sense that we're going to be our grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be paying for, and we're only using a big chunk of it for 5 years, right? And without a larger solution. So this project was escalated because of the need. Certainly, we have to solve this problem, and we thought that we were going to be able to have a whole fix for the entire building, at around $1.5 million. So at that point, that money really made sense, right? Because we weren't going to have to go back there and invest more money, right? So typically when you look at capital projects, the kind of baseline is anything that is beyond 5 years is what you fund. So this is 5 years. It's a big expense, I think, and I'm just concerned it doesn't have a long-term or kind of global solution for the building. We haven't heard from the schools what their plan is. I get the sense that their response will be like, sure, any money that the select board wants to kick towards a school building, we'll take it. But it does mean that it's money that's not going to be spent on something else that maybe is another priority, and we may have to resolve the entire building project, which now is between $4 and $5 million. 5 years from now, right? That cost is going to go up, and we still don't know from the schools until they kind of finish their facilities master plan update.
Yep.
What's going on with that building, right? So they may have no need for it, and that's concerning, as well. But I do recognize. I know John's done a lot of work on this as well. That it's this situation is somewhat untenable for to manage the building facility for heat. So I don't know. I guess I was hoping that we were going to have a joint meeting with the schools on this just to figure out where they're coming from. But
Yeah, they decided they didn't need it, so.
yeah, that's what I mean. I understand. I can imagine their position. If we said to them, well, if we took $900,000 from your budget instead of ARPA, would you use that money, for this building? They would say no. So I'm guessing. So that's my concern. Yeah.
That's the challenge. We're saying what do the schools have a use for this building? And right now, actually, the rec department has a use for this building, and there's a lease for an after-school program for this building, but neither of those are specifically school purposes, right? So, I mean, I would argue, like, well, it's the school's building, it's using things for the purpose of our elementary school students for after-school programs and for summer programs, but, you know, fully, it's not, it's school adjacent at this point. So, like, whether is it gonna come back in service for K-12 schools or for preschool at some level would be a question, but I don't know, you know, but right now, I think it's more of a, like, specifically rec, which is town, not school, and then, you know, a after-school program that's using that space.
And we're not going to have the facilities plan for schools for another couple of years. So it just got funded at town meeting. They plan to do it before additional letters of interest from Morocco, but we could be 2 years away from knowing the disposition of this building. Meanwhile, we have heat failures, so.
Yeah, and
tons of families that need the
Yes.
services being provided there.
Yep. All right.
yeah, and I think that, you know, from the schools, I won't speak for the schools, but I think the conversation came, you know, up a few years ago when they developed the site-based after-school programs through, you know, Kidsborough, and so that there was a little, you know, a little bit of doubling of efforts there. So if they say to us, we plan to be here for the next 25 years for, you know, facilities that support students, you know, go at it, everything needs to be upgraded, then I honestly would want to see, you know, a phased-in solution where we're looking at our stabilization funds over the next, you know, several years and saying we're going to commit X amount of dollars towards the $5 million project, not just the short-term fix. So that's what I don't know. It just seems like we're kicking the can down the road a little bit here, and it's an expensive one.
Okay. So we've got some questions. I think, John, are you able to join that meeting tomorrow?
I am.
Okay. So I'll type these up. We'll get them off to, you know, Beth, Pete, Weston, Sampson. Beth, I'll defer to Beth as to where these questions can go, but I'll make sure you have them in the morning. All right. And it doesn't sound like we're ready to take a vote tonight, contingent on any school committee approval. So, okay. We can move on to the next agenda item, which is we'll invite Jay to the table. We're getting there, I promise. CPA next steps. So we have, in our packet, we have proposed ballot question that, you know, the town clerk needs the ballot question in the fall. I think we're in a position to agree, perhaps tonight, on the ballot question that will go before voters to put the CPA out there in November. So we have that, as well as, you know, potentially what involvement could or should Select Board have at any CPA campaign. So Jay, I don't know which order you want to take that up in, but we see those as two next steps, for sure.
Sure. So the ballot question itself is pretty formulaic. There's a few different forms that they've used over the years, but it's essentially all the same. There's a question and a summary that goes on the ballot for folks. The forms are tried and true. You plug and play the different exemptions that you've done into, but otherwise there's no customization. There's no extra stuff you put in. These are forms that have been used town after town, and I just mirrored the town meeting vote with respect to the unique terms to Winchester on the amount and the few exemptions that town meeting elected. So that's the easy part. And then the other stuff is what you do between now and then, and I drafted a motion for you all to, if you wanted to put that ballot question forward, and then how you approach it from here on out. There's a number of ways you can do it. There's rules that apply your policy-making elected board, so you have a little bit of leeway as to how involved or not involved you may choose to be over the next few months, assuming a November 5th ballot question. And there's some things you can't do, but there's a lot you could do as in your perch as members of the select board. So we can go through that. The state has advisories on it.
Yep, that you've shared. Thank you. And I don't know, maybe a question for the CPA working group, of which Anthea and Mike, you are representatives. Are you aware of a CPA campaign that's coming together? Do we know? Does anyone raise their hand?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think there have been a lot of folks that are interested and anxious to get started, and so I think, you know, a mid-summer timeline to kind of start pulling everyone together and then really hitting the campaign trail like right in September, but doing all of the background work and the organizing over the summer months, and sending out communications to boards, committees, town meeting members that, as well, that want to be involved. I don't know, Anthea, if you think anything otherwise.
Okay. So to the extent that residents of the town
Yep.
are interested in getting organized, Jay, I know you gave us some advisory, so any sort of high-level guidelines for us to not wade into territory we shouldn't be wading into as elected officials?
No, you have every right to be as active or inactive. Obviously, these outside groups, well, there could be formal groups, there could be informal groups. There could be like ballot committees that have obligations to report and kind of register, so to speak, but it just could be loose collections of folks doing yard signs and you know, having coffees or you know, get-togethers to discuss the various elements of pros and cons on either side of the divide. The select board, you have every right as a select board to take positions and to get certain messages out within the bounds of how you distribute things or don't. But as individuals, you have every right to participate in these committees outside of your role as a select board member, and speak in favor, pro or con, as you see fit. Some folks on select boards like to stay away from that. Others embrace it. You know, it's going to be, I think, a pretty active campaign season with it, in addition to all the other crazy campaign stuff we have coming up, so.
And we shouldn't be using town resources in advance of any ballot question, as in not mailing things, not printing things, not tasking.
Yeah, so
staff
you
here.
can use resources for very vanilla, you know, there's a vote coming up and here's what it says. That's always allowed. What you can't do, you could have umpteen meetings as a select board, come to positions, take a vote, advocate within this room right here, have those votes or those positions made clear in the normal way that you make your positions clear on the website through materials that are available right here. Mailers that have advocacy in them are like the classic no-no. And there's other rules about use of buildings. If you had special access to a particular building or any one of you that to be advocates or another group had access to it, there's rules around equal time, but those are pretty.
So Jay, can a committee that's advocating for the CPA, can they, as well as any party who may be opposing, can they have links on our website to their website, or is that?
No.
No, okay. I just wanted to put that
That's
out
something
there.
we want to stay away from.
Perfect. Yep.
Because also, so there's a few reasons. One, there's the advocacy stuff.
Yep.
And then the second is kind of along the lines of some of the other kind of
I don't want to adjudicate equality.
Right,
Right.
free speech cases where if you open it up for one, you're opening it up for everything, and not just this at question, but all kinds of political speech as opposed to government speech. And the kind of the recent Shurtleff case, and then the Barron case, which affects towns, you want to be careful as limiting the municipal resources like the website to just the government speech side.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Please.
so if there was a committee and they reserved the large room at the library for an event and a select board member spoke at that, would they be speaking as themselves as an individual in support of the?
So really good question. Select board is in kind of a unique position for municipal government anyway, as a policymaking elected board, then that's the difference between appointed policymaking boards and elected. You can actually identify yourself in that kind of event as a select board member. I mean, it can be a little, there are some edges to it, but you're allowed to do that. If there's a use of a municipal building by a ballot committee, then an opposing ballot committee gets to use that
The
same
same building.
building in a comparable time frame, classic equal time stuff.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and the last question is, during the lead up to town meeting and preparation through this board as, convening a study committee, we had some materials that were posted through town meeting on the town website. Would those essentially be sort of historical deprecated and they can stay there?
Yeah.
But anything new campaign related would
Right,
not be able
so
to be put
they
there?
have their existence in and around a even though it's substantially similar, a non-election related item. That is like fair game, as we talked about in and around the town meeting, even though they're, especially in the CPA thing, it's almost exactly the same thing. You could advocate to your heart's content and even spend money on that stuff. So just cutting and pasting in that and then distributing it would be a no-no, but wherever those items reside, wherever that advocacy resides, is totally fair game.
Can they be linked to, or should a campaign
Yeah, so
download and use their own link?
they could be linked in the same way. If linking to those documents is the way that the select board normally does its business for anything else that comes before you, you have a website that has like a backlog of information that's available for the public, and that's how people get informed. That stuff is fine. Unique, like one-time only mailers, create a new website, something else like that. But if you have on your website a depository for documents and guidance, then those are the kinds of things that are fine, because that's the normal flow of this board as a policymaking board, and that's how you provide information to the public. So that's fine. And then there's a million components of gray area where people cozy up to the line or go over the line. So
And it probably makes sense, as this thing is, and I wanted to maybe just orient us, and then we can potentially move on, but we'll see what you guys have for questions. As this campaign ramps up over the summer, right, and we know that what's in the public domain is in the public domain, what's published is published, and that's accessible because it's on our website. But if we're getting invited to things or asked to comment on things, Jay is available. We should probably check in with him if we're being invited as select board members or just as neighbors, and we think that there's some gray lines. I don't want Jay to go through every permutation of gray or every color that it might look like, but as activities ramp up, we want to just have some boundaries around what are we doing and what should be, what can we say? We don't think we're in the mailing business. And I want to make sure, if we're comfortable with taking a position on the ballot question tonight, I want to make sure we get to that too. But I really thought it was important for Jay to get ahead of this as potentially folks are getting organized or fundraising is beginning, for us to know some of the boundaries, so.
And there's the other element to that, Michelle, is the open meeting law side of it. And I give examples when I give the seminar on it around Proposition 2.5 kind of things, where you all might be at the same fundraiser, or, again, the coffee or a small event in favor or not in favor, and that's totally fine. If you're all on the stage answering questions about the select board position, probably less. So there's going to be some, you will undoubtedly find yourself in the same group, totally okay. But if people could tether together serial comments or group comments that constitutes deliberation, those are the things that, as it heats up, Mike, in September, that you'll want to be careful of in terms of that, which doesn't mean that you can't see John or Michelle during
Wind
the
up at the
months
same
from
plane,
September
yeah.
to November. But
Yeah.
there's just some rules of the road that if you see yourselves out and about and people are saying, well, we want to hear from you all, someone has to go into the other room or
Yeah.
go out in the yard or something.
Yeah, no, I was looking for more of an excuse. He's just everywhere I go, just always following me around, so.
Now, there's your out. Until November, you have it out. Okay. Any other questions for Jay? Thank you, Jay. I don't know, John, if you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the ballot question and summary for acceptance of the Community Preservation Act as prepared by Town Council, and to direct the town clerk to place said question and summary thereof on the state election ballot for an election to be held on November 5th, 2024.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for your patience.
Celts by 21 and a half.
No way.
Oh.
Yeah, they closed really strong in the last.
Richard did another three at the buzzer.
Yeah,
Stop.
no
What are we
one's
at, like
watching
40
this and
minutes
recording the
before
game.
the
It
fourth
might be
quarter starts?
over. Yeah, so
No, no,
MBTA
no,
up.
no.
Come on. Thank you, Jay.
Gavel listening. Mike, can
I'm
you get the
glad
gavel
that
out
they're
of
up
drawer
at
over
the
there,
half.
please?
Come on, Nathan.
Yeah, we will. You know what, we can do it this way here, maybe, quickly. Thank you. Good catch. Let's move the papers. I can reference it one time. But you're right. Show application. Okay. If you all could introduce yourselves. We've seen some of you before, but go ahead. We'll just go right down the line, if you could, and then dive in.
Good
And-
evening. My name is Chris Brennan. I'm Chief of Capital Delivery.
Good evening. My name is Maribel Kelly, and Deputy Chief of Community Right Programs.
Lonnie Fidalgo. I'm a Senior Director for Commuter Rail.
Nathan Ray, Senior Project Manager for Winchester Center Project.
Great.
And
Okay.
we're here tonight to give you an update on what's been happening in the past quarter with the Winchester Center Project. I just want to briefly go over the agenda. We just give you a project overview. I think a lot of people are familiar with the station project.
Nathan, we thought we were celebrating next week, 2 weeks from now, the opening. What's happening? Well, I know you're gonna get into it,
You're
but
gonna love it.
it's gonna, it absolutely
be better.
It's gonna be great.
Let's see.
boy.
Oh, is that for 2024? No, come on.
Right out of the gate, Mr. Fallon. Let Nathan speak.
No, I know Nathan's gonna speak, but I'm, I know people at home, me, we want to know, like, what happened, because I walk by the thing every, like, day or every other day. So what happened? And, supply chain, nope, please, no supply chain. Let's just stick that one in the file cabinet. You don't go with this?
You won't hear supply chain.
Okay, good man.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry, all right, enough.
I'll answer your question.
No, I'm all fired up, all right.
Okay, all right. And so we'll talk about schedule, some upcoming construction activities, our communication plan is in project context. So just a project overview for those who are not familiar with the MBTA Winchester Center project. 2 new fully accessible, high-level side platforms with canopies, 3 new elevators, 2 new ramps, and 3 sets of covered stairs. New lighting, signage, wayfinding. This is a brand new station. New tracks, ties, ballast as well. Communication duct banks. Construction cost of about $50 million right now. And this rendering here shows the Aberdeen lot side of the head house with a photo of that area taken in the last few weeks. Some recent construction activity from this past few months. You see here the Aberdeen, we call it the head house side, the outbound tracks, the stairs and elevator there. And then the opposite side, the middle photo, the Waterfield lot side. And then the Aberdeen ramp with sections being craned into place just last week. Some more construction activity up at track level. This is the platform and stairway at the Aberdeen side of the head house. In the middle there you see a view of the station along Laraway Road where there's canopies and another ramp. And then the last picture is a platform of the bridge looking north over Waterfield Road. And as of last Saturday, this section now has the platform installed. Schedule impacts. Well, there's been some unanticipated schedule impacts. Essentially what has happened is that we lost our ability to single track through the project site. On March 6th, we lost our single tracking, and we had to go what we call foul time. So single tracking, foul time, what does that mean? Well, single tracking means trains are running on the same track instead of both tracks through the station. So single track access provides for free access to the work more than foul time does. Foul time, both tracks are live, and workers have to clear the track each time a train passes by. So that slows down construction. So there were 3 projects that really fundamentally cost us this impact. The ATC, we call it ATC-PTC program, the fiber optic resiliency project, and the Northside commuter rail maintenance work. In addition to this, we started to see increased demand of resources that were constrained by system-wide demand, and these projects included the track improvement plan, GLX, and South Coast Rail, and other projects like it. Well, as soon as we were informed by railroad operations that our access was changing, we took steps to resolve the problem. In late March, we altered the train schedule in order to improve access, but we found out this wasn't sufficient. In April, we coordinated the rescheduling of the fiber optic resiliency work and the north side maintenance work. That got us back to the original single track access that we had. As we needed to make up for the lost time, we added crews, work shifts, including weekends, and extended normal hours of work. So given these schedule challenges, Winchester Station is now scheduled to partially reopen by September 30th of this year. That's moved from the earlier date of July. So this reopening in September includes a partial platform reopening to the south half of the station. I'll show you a graphic in a moment. The inbound and outbound platforms will be open with 1 elevator for each platform. The return of parking in the Aberjona and the Waterfield lots that we have easements for right now, and then completion of work on Waterfield Road. Substantial completion and full station opening are scheduled for December of this year. That's moved from the earlier date of November. Punch list work and landscaping are scheduled for 2025, and this work is not anticipated to significantly impact the town or parking. So this graphic shows the phased opening of Winchester Center, the blue to the left being the partial opening, and the red being added to that for the full station opening. So in terms of parking, from now to September 30th, parking really remains unchanged. We need these easements to perform the work. Starting in September 30th, the Waterfield Aberjona lots will be given back to the town. And as of December, when full station opening is realized, Laraway Road will be reopened. So upcoming construction, what to expect this summer and fall, we will be focusing on the south end of the station on both the east and west head houses, the Aberjona ramp, and there's a mid-stair on Laraway Road, steel work, elevator work, staircase construction. Neighbors can expect continued noise from construction activity, including heavy equipment and machinery. Requests for night work are forthcoming. MBT intends to, we want to limit night work as much as possible. Construction advisories will be distributed ahead of any scheduled night or weekend work. This slide just shows in more detail, breaking down the project in each section, showing the work at platform level and the Aberjona and Waterfield sections going to end of September, and the rest of the project going till December. Our efforts to date regarding project communication have included notices for weekend work, and we email to project subscribers. You can subscribe to the project and be updated as emails are sent out. Those same flyer blasts are sent to the town, usually the same week. We've also been doing regular project website updates and project email address and hotline monitoring. So we monitor and respond to inquiries when they're received, and we keep an inquiry log. We also have a full-time resident engineer as the point of contact with the town. Moving forward, we want to increase our project communication efforts. Notices for weekend work to project subscribers and the town will go from same week notice to 2 weeks notice in advance. In addition, bi-weekly update of the project website will happen. And we'll also continue to monitor and respond to inquiries from the project email and hotline. Also, the town manager will receive a 4-week look ahead of construction activities, and will establish a weekly call with the town and town officials to coordinate upcoming work. This actually started this morning. And the RE remains the point of contact with the town for overnight construction, as the case may be, and there will be an increased MBTA project management staff presence on the job site, moving from 1 to 2 days a week to 3 to 4 days a week. And so, if anyone has questions or inquiries about the project, this is the information that they can use to contact MBTA's project staff. So with that, are there any questions?
Yes, Nathan, a couple of questions, really simple ones. Do you anticipate, and I understand it's hard to do this, other projects that could either take staff resources, so, the project gets delayed, or other, other lines or entities needing to use the track that would, so then you're down to a single track, you get foul time or anything like that, or is this a priority now on your list of items to complete?
Let's go back to that slide. So let me sort of stitch some of this together, just so folks understand the context and how this happened and why it wasn't foreseen.
Yep.
So the ATC PTC program, it's essentially a safety program. It is essentially replacing the entire PTC system, north side and south side, over the last 5.5 years. And then we're overlaying an ATC system on top of the PTC system, ATC system being automatic train control. So this is a federally mandated program. This, and it's mandated to be finished by the end of this year, federally mandated. If we don't finish it, what happens, we have to slow the whole commuter rail line down to 10 miles an hour. So this is why this is a very high priority project within the MBTA. Have to go back to last summer. Essentially, when the Sumner Tunnel, and I promise I'll get to stitching this all together, but you have to understand how this works. So railroad operations essentially controls everything to do with the railroad, including when and how we get access at all times and how we work. When we went to reschedule this last fall, we went to the outage. There's an outage committee that's made up of railroad operations people and Keolis people, and Keolis is the operator of the railroad. We asked for the specific access that we required in order to make that schedule. That was before we came in here and made a commitment for the July 29th date. We were granted that access in around October? October. So let me just get back to last summer. During the Sumner Tunnel closure, we were ordered by the governor's office to cease all work that disrupted service on any of the north side lines. Originally, we were anticipating, the Sumner Tunnel, anybody that was going to, self-divert onto the commuter rail system was going to use the Newburyport, Rockport line. They weren't going to drive over the Lowell or the Haverhill or the New Hampshire line. But the state DOT was extremely nervous it was going to be Armageddon shutting down the Sumner Tunnel for the first time ever. And so they required us to shut down, including the ATC PTC program. When we test, the type of testing, so the construction has been going on for 5 years. It's not the physical construction, putting in the signal system, the bungalows. It's the testing of the system, because when you test signal systems, you can't have trains running on them. It would shunt. It would mess up the testing. So when we shut down blocks of the railroad to test the ATC PTC system, we literally have to shut down the railroad. We have to either divert those folks with buses, the riders with buses, or we self-divert. If we're close enough to the city, we might put people on the orange line and not have to bus. But at the same time, particularly as it pertains to the Haverhill line, we divert rail traffic, including freight traffic, to other lines, including the Haverhill line. Okay, so that's the background. The intention, and we've probably done about 15 sort of really long-term shutdowns, 30 to 60 days, and probably about 30 shorter-term shutdowns. The shutdown that affected us this spring was supposed to happen in the summer, late summer. That had to be pushed into the fall. The fall shutdown got pushed into sometime this year. We did not know when that was going to happen, and at the time, nor did the operations people. What put us into a corner more so was the other projects that started to impact us, the GLX, the South Coast Rail. So when you think about resources in terms of that type of testing, you require locomotives, signal people, all sorts of resources from the commuter rail. Those are the same resources that are required for South Coast Rail, for instance, as we're starting up. If anybody's been reading, we're just starting up the testing there. Actually, it was supposed to start yesterday, it started today. So I can't answer completely for railroad operations because it's a real juggling act, to be quite honest with you, but I think they were forced into doing that testing during this period when they originally not intending to do so. And this also, and I don't want to get into belabor too much the ATCPT program, when we do shutdowns of that system, it's also governed by the FRA, both how and when we do it. And again, all of that wasn't figured out until just this spring. So that's why this was not anticipated to impact this project. And even so, I think they over-committed to some extent their resources or their access on this line. And when I say that, it's, when you're single tracking, not just running the service, when you're actually passengers on the cars, but you have the freight, you have the equipment, and you have to move equipment during the day. There are trains we move around without there being people on them because we need to get them into proper position. So that was the primary basis for what happened, and quite frankly, I don't think there was anything any of us could have done to have moved that project once they set that had to be done at that time. As I said, it's a very high priority project, not that the Winchester project isn't. We obviously want to get out of here as badly as you guys want us out of here, or not obviously, because it may not be obvious. We want to get out of here just as badly as you want us out of here. The fiber optic resiliency project, I think they piggybacked on with some of the changes. That should not and would not have been a priority over Winchester. They made a unilateral, when I say unilateral, without our knowledge, and that's actually one of my projects, allowing that back on the line. Had we known that, we would have never allowed that project to proceed and interfere with this project, because this project would have been a higher priority. And the North Side Commuter Rail Maintenance project is it's sort of it's the result. So has everybody heard of the TIP program that's happening in Boston, where we're shutting down parts of the transit system? Just about every week we're shutting down parts of the transit system, we're busing. And that TIP program is a result of deferred maintenance. And commuter rail, as they explained it to us, was they got nervous that they had been deferring their maintenance for about 2 years. And they made that, again, unilateral decision to proceed with some of their maintenance work that did affect this project. Once we learned of those two projects, it was relatively easy with the help of the general manager to get those deferred. And again, it did require the assistance of the general manager, because the railroad operations truly, they don't answer to us. They very rarely listen to us. They were convinced we could complete our project with the access they were giving us. It was a bit of a Donnybrook, so to speak, in some of the planning meetings. Also, when just some of the support services in terms of track improvement, the track improvement plan, not just the resources like bodies like flagmen, but we're using, and this I think also influenced this spring, on the Hager line, which is where the ATC PTC program is being finished. This is the last line to complete. We often self-divert onto the orange line. At the same time, this TIP improvement plan is also working on the orange line, so it's a bit of a balancing act between allowing the TIP program to proceed and allowing the ATC PTC system. That TIP plan, by the way, resulted from the speed restrictions, about 350 of them put on the system last spring, early summer. We did not formulate that plan as an authority until the end of this year. And in fact, most of the dates and most of the diversions were not set until January, February, when the governor approved them. So, well, when we say there were certain things that were not recognized at the time when the commuter rail committed to our access, we're not blowing, we're not
Making it up. I get it.
We're not making it up. And the same thing with GLX and South Coast Rail. I mean, there's equipment issues. We need locomotives to do testing and work, and, we often, when we're single tracking, we need additional train sets or, to make the system work with single tracking.
Yes.
In addition to, when we're diverting a GLX and the TIP program, we're often working alongside the commuter rail line, so that requires us to assign additional resources to those commuter rail lines so that they can actually work on the adjacent transit line. It's a bit much, and a lot of this bit much had come to us in the last year or so in terms of particularly the TIP program. South Coast Rail certainly being a surprise as to how far behind it was, and GLX with the issues that we had with GLX. And GLX is similar. When we have track, the type of equipment we needed to correct the rail working on the track adjacent to the commuter rail, that drew additional resources from the commuter rail because there are certain safety protocols we have to put in place to take resources.
All right, well, you've successfully taken Nathan off the hook. Thank you very much.
And just to add, Winchester is not the only project that's being impacted on the Capital River Group.
Yeah.
I have the other Worcester Union Station and 18th Station. All of them have been seeing the impact and some delay on the schedule.
And talk about unanticipated. I'll give you an example. So if the Celtics do not win tonight, and we go to a game 6 on Thursday, that puts our parade sometime next Tuesday. We have one of our diversion, 9-day diversions on the Orange Line is scheduled to go off on Saturday. We will not be allowed to start that project on Saturday. If we don't start it on Saturday, then we have to move it further into the fall and resequence. So we're all fingers crossed that the Celtics win tonight. Otherwise, we have additional challenges ahead of us.
There's your butterfly, Bill.
On this. We promised to cast that far enough ahead so it won't affect this particular job, because it is an orange line. We'll need the Havel line to divert.
So I think, for me, two things. I mean, obviously, there's this confluence of events that happened, and, you went through them in great detail, but you knew some of these things, before March, probably in December, maybe in January. I know there's updates. I get the updates. Here's the picture. Everything's fine. It's a little late when we're looking at what we thought was July. I had people over at my house over the holidays. Oh, it'll be July, right? I'm telling everybody, yep, south of the Rotary. It's June 17th, right? I mean, the town manager's been in touch. So, no news, bad news doesn't get better with age. So I think to the extent that there's some little more proactive communication would have been helpful. That's the first thought. Tell us sooner. We would know it's not opening in July just by looking at it. There's no elevators going up and down those towers. There's no ramp starting at the ground. So, but realistically, what is it? And I think, so that's one piece. The other piece is you have an easement to, laying down in spaces that expires the end of August. Now you need the whole month of September. Who knows beyond that? We're going to need to look at, we thought we'd have our parking lots back for the last month or two of a farmer's market season, right? But kids are going back to school at late August, so we're going to need to talk about sort of what that looks like and how long you expect to have an easement and what considerations we're going to look for the MBTA to do, because it has been disruptive for all the businesses and for the residents. And, Beth in her office get a lot of emails. Now I start to get copied, which is fun. But I think to the extent that and I mean, if anything else with twice weekly updates, that's great. But if some other South Coast thing diverts resources, even just tell us, hey, a day over on South Coast is a 1 week delay. If we just even have some math to understand, this impact is add 3 days, add 3 days, add 3 days. You know what those triggers are. If we just know September 30 is now October 15, even just understanding the math around the next thing, the next lever that pulls costs us 5 days. Tell us that. So we know so that we can tell our businesses, when can we expect the dust to settle, truly? I think just more proactive with real tangible facts. We can do math, we can try to manage expectations, but it's a little late in the game to get this update, 6 weeks from when we thought you might be opening it up. So that's me, and I'm going to turn over to my colleagues to maybe ask some more questions or reactions, but.
Well, and I agree with you, it would have been better to give you notice earlier, and if we did that, we would have done it without knowing what the date, and that was why we held off on contacting the town, is that we didn't know what the schedule impacts were. They were initially much, and I don't want to go into what we went through to get the schedule back to September 30th, because unfortunately it wasn't just trading 2 months for 2 months. But I understand, and I understand, I agree with you. We could have come to you sooner, but we would have come to you without a definitive date. And as soon as we had a date, that's when we reached out to you. It was a matter of stopping stopping the impact and then resequencing the schedule, which is what we were doing the 2 months that we were silent on the impacts.
And you'll appreciate that. I know you have a date that you feel good about. I'll believe it when I see it, right? Like, I appreciate that you're committed. It's 2 months out. I certainly hope so. So let's, fingers crossed, right? Celtics win, parade happens, and September 30 is real. But you're doing what you can. We've got to have some faith that you will deliver. So, Mike or Bill, I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say.
I'm good, thank you.
Just echo everything Michelle said.
Well, the general manager has given us assurances we have his support in terms of railroad operations and their interference. Unless something happens, like, we had a washout out in Leominster where the line got taken out and we have to divert. I mean, unless it's something catastrophic like that, it won't be other projects, including South Coast Rail. The ATC, the test train equipment is not going to be an issue going forward. And with respect to the other projects, we have roughly 85 to 90 projects ongoing right now, but none of them are in the wheelhouse where they'll affect the north side. So, but like I said, best laid plans.
Yep.
Understand.
Okay. Anything else? I know we made you guys wait. We had a lot of town business, so thank you.
Thank you.
Go
Thank you.
root on the team. Only good news. I don't want to hear anything else. So,
Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay,
We appreciate
thanks.
it. Thank you.
we look forward to hearing more from you as we go forward. Thanks. All right. So now we've got just our own business, which there's many. ARPA community needs, Anthea.
Yeah, I am the point in the evening that everybody watching anything on TV has been waiting for.
Yes.
So I will, I think there's some things to talk about, but I will try to be as brief as possible in hopes that maybe we get to see some of the fourth quarter. So we've discussed for a bit, how are we going to do these ARPA community grants? We've set aside $300,000 towards them. Thinking of this may go to, are there local organizations who we can support? Are there areas of need that some of these ARPA fundings can go to in the sense that, this ARPA broadly came through as a result of a COVID pandemic and, had broad priorities in terms of health and safety and managing some of the things that were lost within that period. So I developed, with the help of Beth and Stacy, just a draft application of what it could look like if we, to give an application to community organizations to apply for an ARPA grant from the nitty-gritty details. You need your federal tax ID, you need to include, X, Y, and Z organization information, to what their sort of project narrative or application would look like, what documents we would anticipate seeing came from looking at a number of different communities who have done similar things. So I don't think any of that should be too jaw-dropping, right? Nothing necessarily surprising. I think the bigger thing for us is looking at this of some questions. Beth had probably 2 years at this point, 2 years ago, gone out to some organizations in town to get feedback if they had specifics that they were interested in. When ARPA first came out, there was also outreach to see what organizations' needs might be. And so we do have a list of sort of municipal and community organizations who could be sort of the initial eye for this. So whether it's kind of appropriate to stick with our existing list as this, these grants are sort of in that vein, of the previous like requests that went out about ARPA needs, or whether this is a broader open up to the community. We also have, so in thinking, you'll see right up at the top there, the dollar value is hashed out. Like that's the MBTA schedule.
Yeah.
If you're looking at what was that.
Of what?
Is that the dollar value is hashed out? Because we had thrown around, like, is it, what's the dollar amount? One thing that many federal grant programs do is that they say there's X amount of federal dollars and we anticipate making X awards, so that it doesn't necessarily tie us to saying, or to constraining any organization to saying, oh, I have a project and it's, $3,000 over what they say, I shouldn't put it forward, but to be able to kind of frame within, there's 300,000 set aside for this grant and we expect to make between like 6 and 10 awards or something. It gives people an idea of the ballpark. And then I think as like a next step, anywhere we go with this, we'd share it with town council for their review, just making sure that everything is appropriate, fill in just some of the, nitty-gritty ARPA pieces that need to be in there, and then would want to be pretty specific about timeline of when this goes out, how long, I think a question for council, how long we need to give for folks to respond to it, and then we would review applications at our following select board meeting, make awards, and ask that the funds, because we are approaching this deadline for ARPA, be spent or allocated within 60 days, so that we know that these are organizations who are going to put this funding to specific use when we award it, and that does in fact happen, so that we don't have any sort of lost ARPA dollars there.
So are you thinking, I know we need to come up with the criteria, but like a September kind of outreach and then votes from us in October, so funds can be dispersed in October? Is there any is that a timeline that might work?
Yeah,
I think I would
You'd want to pull it in?
bring that up, yeah.
I would push
Okay.
it back such that we would review, I don't actually know when we're meeting this August, but, if we're able to.
16th for sure, right? We're meeting
19th.
19th?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the
And I
wrong
think
month,
there's
sorry, I was looking at
maybe
September.
one meeting on the 5th.
No. So
Nope.
the date for August is just the 19th.
One
and
meeting on
then
the
it's
19th.
September 9th and
9th.
23rd.
But we could if we could find a
Yes.
time where we could get
We could do a meeting
quorum,
if
we
we
could do
needed to.
a daytime meeting in August. I wouldn't want to hold this up, just because
Okay.
we only have that one Monday meeting.
Right. Okay.
So feedback here would be kind of who is the right audience, I guess?
So in my memo, I just provided a list of people who there was outreach to.
Shown interest
and
before?
responses previously, yep.
So I don't see any reason to not necessarily go with that same group that showed interest. Obviously, the list is a little old, right, a couple of years old. The projects may have been resolved. Some of those projects have been resolved through other means, through ARPA, through town meeting appropriation. So I think outreach to the same group that showed interest with, as Anthea said, some parameters around, how long do they have to respond? Anthea and I spoke this morning. I think the notion of the select board intends to make between 6 and 10 grants, right? This is roughly how much money we have, and we intend to award 6 or 10 grants, so that one applicant doesn't think, I'm going to get all of it. And not everyone says, oh, it's divide by 6 or divide by 8 or divide by 10. But it gives a range of what an appropriate project might be. So I think if we said every grant will be of the same value, like every grant is $30,000, someone might have a $17,000 need, but they're just going to pack things in to get to a number. So we want to make sure we can get the language right with Jay on what to expect. And then we need to come up with some criteria on how we're going to assess, right? Which things. Hopefully we'll have more than 6 or 10 applications. We'll actually have to make some choices. But we're going to need, maybe in our next meeting, we can come up with some criteria of how we want to decide.
So I think that makes sense of our next meeting to review criteria. I know it's helpful to provide some criteria when an application is given. So just thinking, if we had some criteria, if we had taken this application and polished it and had town council's review and have it ready such that we could provide it to these groups sort of within the week following it and ask for their applications. And ask for applications within 30 days?
Yeah.
Is that reasonable?
Okay, so maybe we can have applications finalized by the end of July to have responses due in August or sooner? Okay. Maybe we can do 3 weeks, given it's a local type exercise. We don't need 4 weeks, but, okay.
Everybody who's watching is aware that this is coming.
Everybody who's watching, who's not paying attention to the Celtics game. Thank you. Any other
We'll be
questions?
watching on double speed tomorrow.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm sure 3 weeks is plenty of time to put together an application for a good grant.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think if there is any other sort of specific feedback on there, then, you can share that, but I think it's overall it's fairly high level in what's going in there, asking for a summary, what they meet, what not, so what the impact is, how we get there.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I think after tonight's meeting, I'm going to publish, like we did a few weeks ago, sort of next steps, and we'll confirm on what I agreed to do and what Anthea's agreed to do. Okay. Next up, committee updates.
Can I just make a quick comment on that?
Of course, sorry.
Yeah,
I think you raised your hand and then I moved right by it.
That's fine, that's fine. I'll be quick. The only thing that I would say too is that, for some smaller groups and organizations, I think getting a lot of this information is probably going to prohibit them from applying. And I might say, when you're looking at proof of financial stability, most recent audit, annual budget, all of that, people might say this is too cumbersome, I don't want to do it. So maybe we say if we approve you, you will be expected to do this.
A report of some type.
For disbursement. I don't think we're going to go through their financial statements and say, I don't like what they're doing,
That's true.
And so that's my only comment, that I think it's the right information, but, if you don't, it's a lengthy application for a short period of time over the summer when people might only be looking for $2,000. And the other piece of it I would say is maybe that we say that we'll favor applications, or they'll be deemed more favorable if the organization is also providing matching funds or funds that that they're willing to invest to, because we've kind of done that in the past as well with things. So.
Good.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I had it highlighted, but then opening up again,
Yeah.
in Acrobat, it decided not to. Yeah, I don't know that maybe necessarily, especially since these are organizations that we're talking about who we're aware of in Winchester, who we've reached out to before. We could scratch that portion of some of this, because it's not like somebody is going to come up who we've never heard of before and we're going to say, can you please provide us your audit, because you know, like so yeah, I'm on board with.
And it might be just something that we say we may request that information, so to, required for disbursement, so people don't go through the whole thing and then not get the money and then be like, why did I, make a financial statement that I don't typically do. So, so that was, the only thing from my perspective. And there was one more, now I'm forgetting. And maybe we can just reach out to the organizations that already applied and say,
Heads up.
Do you want to keep this in the pool, or do you want to
Yeah.
change it, or do you want to forget about it?
Right, and make them aware that it's coming with
Yeah.
some timeline. Yep, so they don't miss it, right?
Yeah, and so we acknowledge that they did go through the
Right,
process
we got it in
originally.
the first place, yeah.
A process.
That's good. Okay. So that's ARPA updates. I don't know if we have any CPA updates. I'll do a quick capital heads up for you all, but any CPA updates from the working group? I know we have a
Yeah, that's in the packet with the
Yes.
list of appointed.
Okay. We do have a select board member that needs to be designated for the bylaw working group.
Do we? Because we're not named in that.
The town manager is named, right? No, not even?
So the select board shall convene an advisory committee.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in
So
theory, we
we-
should have a person overseeing it or two.
Yes, but we, in discussing that, there was some comment of, we didn't necessarily need to be there, because as we're convening it, we're not gonna convene it without us.
Okay. So it's a little late, but Beth, what do you think? Do you think we need someone to at least be like the shepherd or the pilot and co-pilot?
I think that was my expectation, at least.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's.
And do we have any sense of when that group's going? So we have to convene it. So we have nominees. We've seen some names come through. We need to decide when the first meeting of that group should be, right?
Right. Yeah, so we, maybe 2 meetings ago, you asked me to reach out to all the boards and
Yep.
committees listed to get
And you got a bunch of names?
appointee, which I did, which is in the packet. So I think the group is ready to go as soon as we want to start setting up meetings.
Okay. So can we, maybe, after this meeting, let's pick a date certain when we're going to start? Having that group convene, or at least ask the town manager's office to get some dates, and then we should decide. If not, maybe we need to have a meeting to decide if it's Anthony and Mike, if it's a different combination of the two of us that are going to make sure that work is getting done and we're making progress. So I don't know that we need to, I'll raise my hand to be one of those two people, but I don't know that we need to decide right now. We should just maybe get it launched and understand who's going to start showing up. So it's a little late to make maybe big decisions right now. So, and John flashed me a score, shame on you, but it was apparently good. The other update is I spoke with Capital Planning's chair this afternoon, and, the communication was, hey, if Select Board has a priority capital project or two and a way to fund it, we'd like to hear about it. And we may invite them in July, maybe at the end of the month, but one of our July meetings have CPA come in and talk about their ranking process. But what I asked Patty to put a table is 2 pages of CPA budget, projects and budgets that were approved at fall town meeting of '23, spring town meeting of '24. The select board invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering studies to move some of these projects forward. So I would ask us in our next meeting to come back with what we think are priorities. I think John has done a lot of homework on library roof. This is all last fall. Lincoln School chiller, library windows. We do have VFA updates. We had a great presentation a couple weeks ago on VFA. So I can try to pull that information together to give you the VFA rankings of these projects if they align up correctly. But if the select board has priorities and the building stabilization fund has funds, if the select board wanted to put free cash at a project or two, I think we should use the opportunity to make some priority recommendations and try to push that through the capital process. I mean, they should still be, focused on health, focused on safety, focused on those large criteria that CPC uses. But the capital plan is the town manager's plan. The select board has put money and support behind engineering to fix these things. What might we want to knock off in the next capital cycle, in the fall or in the spring? So I just asked the group to look at this list. I don't mind people want to have other walk-on projects, but these were engineering studies and repairs that we thought were important to address in the next 2 years. I'd like to see if we can coalesce around a couple of projects that we want to get behind in the next 2 years and communicate that to capital by the middle of July, certainly by the end of July, so that it's part of their capital planning and ranking cycle this summer. And that's what I talked to Jim about this afternoon, so I said I would put that to our group tonight. So I don't know that we need to sit there and rank them and horse trade right now, but that was where I thought was a good starting point, was engineering studies that are probably close to complete. We have the data. We can probably put a price on some things. What do we think are important projects to get behind? So that's homework assignment for all of us. But it's our chance to have, I think, a voice beyond John as an observer and everybody else as an appointee. So, yes, Anthea.
Can I just ask, we have these engineering studies, some of them probably in various levels of completeness, so it would be helpful to know both things that are...
Which are done, yes.
Which are done, and what the estimated dollar values are of those.
And I think VFA ranking as well, right? So if we have, what's the condition? So engineering done, potential costs, maybe current condition. Put some ranking or at least that's just information. And if you think of some other criteria that would help you individually think about how to evaluate these, let's throw those out there or follow up after the meeting. But suffice it to say, it shouldn't be your favorite project in town, right?
Yeah, see, I mean, that's the question for me is just,
except you can get your favorite.
How do we,
No, you
the
can't.
target of this conversation, but I mean, when we have a bunch of good projects, our job is really to prioritize them, prioritize funding, and make tough decisions on what we're doing, what we're not doing. So when we talk about health and safety, well, a lot of the projects, I mean, if they're here, they're probably connected to that in some way. But, if we're just giving a hard number ranking to something, it's hard. A lot of that can be personal choice, right? And so that, if something is like a bridge that the state says, that we need to repair immediately because they're giving it an F, that's a high priority health and safety project that we need to fund. I would, if out of a scale of 1 to 10, I would give that a 10 for health and safety, right? A project that's like the outdoor classroom, that got added on to the Lincoln project, maybe you can make connection to health and safety, but maybe it's one that's a ranking of a 2 or a 3 instead. So when we look at those priorities, I think we need kind of rankings in there, and especially rankings from staff, because otherwise we're just having volunteers throw numbers at things. And a lot of that, when you're looking at capital planning committee, be representatives from certain groups, a lot of that can be personal choice or political, and there's a lot of gamemanship that goes involved in it. So it doesn't lend itself to our long-term planning process, especially when we're looking at the CPA and some of those other things. So.
Yep. So I think with all of those considerations, I'm just asking our group if we want to get behind 1 or 2 initiatives, let's see what we can. And if we can coalesce around a couple, that's what we'll communicate to capital planning. And I will invite, I think, capital planning's chair in to a future meeting to go through their ranking process. But we can have different priorities. That's okay. We're a body. We can do those things. So
yeah, but as we develop a process, I think it's important for us to evolve. I don't think it's acceptable to say we've been doing this for 10 years, so we shouldn't question it. I think really the opposite is true. So
that may be, but I think this exercise, at least for the next month is not to revisit this current ranking process. It's to think about what is it that we want to put our weight and support behind, so.
Well, I get that, but it's also hard for us to just, prioritize if, like when we're developing criteria for the ARPA community grants, right? We need to do that in order so we can make decisions around
Yep.
things. And so I think if we're also making decisions around capital projects here, which we want to prioritize, what is the policy behind the priorities besides just projects we
So,
you know,
I think,
yeah.
no, I want
We
to.
can have a conversation. I know it's late.
No,
We
no,
can have
no.
a conversation offline.
No,
It's fine.
all I'm saying is priorities that or rankings or process that we think are effective for this group, the way we're going to arrive at a decision are processes we can suggest and recommend to capital planning. It's not as if they have to operate in isolation, and it's not as if we can coalesce around some ideas. Then I think we can absolutely share that.
Yeah.
Whether that gets implemented in the summer or not likely, but it's data and it's a process that I think we can try to endorse and try to push into. So it's not wasted effort.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, is the last, are we truly, because I tend to jump over things, are we truly at number 10, Mystic School lease? Can someone correct me here if I'm wrong? Did we actually get
Select Board Committee assignments, number 9.
committee assignments? I was thinking we'd punt again.
Yeah.
Mr. Miller?
Hoping you don't punt again?
Yep, but what openings do we have?
Permanent Street Tree Committee.
Okay, let's do one for Mr. Miller. Thank you for your patience. Who would like to,
Conservation Commission too.
is there?
We have 2 liaisons, Mike and Anthea.
Yep,
Permanent Street, I'll do.
okay.
All right.
You sure?
Sure.
John, Permit Street. And so Conservation has there too. Is there any other committee that you were concerned about, David?
Just the two I'm chair of.
Okay, so I think now you currently have, so did you hear your
Legit.
conservation people are Mike and Anthea? Did I hear that right? And now Street Tree is going to be John and Anthea. Okay,
Perfect.
So that's Mike saying he'll stay on conservation?
Yep, yeah, I'll stick with that, yep.
okay.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Oh, geez, if you told me earlier, I would have tried to get you to that sooner, David, thanks. Okay, so now we can do Mrs. Schooley's, and thank you, because I was jumping over something, because I just kept seeing the same school select board committee blank, and I thought we were done. All right, Mystic School lease. So we have a lease that the schools have negotiated with Kids Corner. We are a signatory on that lease. It's a 3-year lease with 2 extensions, is that correct? So Beth's,
Overall, it's a 10-year lease. The
Right,
first
carrying
lease-
on the first
This is
5.
an amendment to the first lease, which was for 5 years, with an option to extend additional 5.
another 5. So we want to take a motion to authorize Beth to sign that lease on our behalf. We're kind of the landlord. We do use about half the building for the rec department, but this lease is specific to Kids Corner, and the rent that they'll pay that will go to the school committee or school department starting in FY '26.
Move to authorize the town manager to execute a lease between Kids Corner and the school committee for the Mystic School for a 3-year period with 2 one-year options.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that was like the faintest second ever over there, Ms. Brady.
There's
was
rarely a
listening
lot of
really
emphasis or strength in the seconds.
All right, so consent agenda, I will not treat with no respect. So go
move
ahead.
that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Move that we adjourn for the evening.
Second.
All those in
Are we gonna
favor?
have some discussion on this?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Go Celtics. Thank you, WinCam. Thanks, everybody. Go back and watch the game.